Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and today we're joined by Bill Arsenault,
Hey everyone.
Bill Leon,
Hello.
Hawk Ripjaw,
Hi.
and joining us for the first time, Will. I'm
Hey.
gonna let you. Should we go by your full name or just your first name?
Yeah, might as well just go by my full name. Why not?
All right, Will Ashton.
Hello.
Will Ashton, friends with the Pixar Theory guy.
Yeah, we do a podcast together called.
Yes.
His name's Sean Negroni, by the way. I don't want to slight him. He has done. a lot
Oh, right.
Of
No, I didn't mean any disrespect by that. I'm just saying that's how I know who he is.
Right. Yeah. We do a podcast together called Cinemaholics, and I also do another podcast called It Ain't Ogre Till It's Ogre. I don't know if you guys know about that one or not.
This is you taking Tim and Eric's Shrek the Third joke to the end.
Basically, yeah. It's sort of like a combination of that Grown Ups podcast. I think it's called The Best Worst Idea of All Time. It's like that meets you talking you two to me. It's all we do is we watch Shrek once a month and then we talk about it. But the thing is, the movie itself doesn't change, so we do a bunch of different things in lieu of that. So once we did an episode in the car during like a road trip, so we recorded in 3 states during like a snowstorm. We watched Shrek backwards once. We've done just a bunch of crazy things.
What?
Well, I mean, Shrek is love, right?
Right. Well, we don't talk about that. Just
Shrek is
the
life.
podcast pretty PG, but yeah, we watched it once backwards. It became Kirsch, which is like it basically became like a Russian tragedy where a happily married ogre loses his wife, his best friend, and is basically ostracized from society.
Sure.
And if you ever get the chance to watch Shrek backwards, I would highly recommend it because
How did you go about setting that up to watch it back? Like, was it?
All right. That was actually my co-host Matt Serafini. He found a way to do it. There's a program online where you can flip an audio file, and so we took like the streaming copy of Shrek because you can now because it's on Canadian Netflix. You can I think download it and then you can just take the files. It's complicated, and he would have a better way of explaining it, but there is a way you can do it, and it's a little complicated, but overall I definitely would recommend it if you have the patience and time to watch it, because I don't know if you ever watched a movie, if you've actually watched a movie backwards, but it's nuts.
Well, Hawk, I think you ought to do that for The Cat in the Hat.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're hoping to do that for season 2, or excuse me, I'm hoping to do that for season 2. I think most people expect us to do Shrek 2, but I kind of want to just do Cat in the Hat because that movie is fascinatingly terrible.
So, Will, just in case you don't know, there's sort of a, I don't know if you call it a bet or a challenge that I've given Hawk here, which is once he has completed a full viewing of Cat in the Hat for the 20th time,
okay,
I will finally break down and actually watch it.
Oh, you've never seen it?
No, and I refuse to until Hawk has seen it 20 times.
Okay, but do you know like the details about the film?
Oh, I know a great deal about it. I mean, let me just go on Front Street and say that The Grinch might be one of the most insulting things I've ever seen in terms
I would agree with that.
It's respect to the source material.
Yeah.
And so I never watched Cat in the Hat simply because to me that was just as bad looking. And but Hawk has made a pretty good case.
I will say that The Cat in the Hat is a lot better looking because it's shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, who is like a 3-time Oscar-winning cinematographer. He did Gravity and like The Revenant and Birdman. So the movie actually looks pretty good. Like the cinematography in the live-action Grinch is terrible. Like they look every shot. I think Nostalgia Critic once said this. Like every shot looks like they rub Vaseline on the lens.
Yeah.
You can like barely see what's going on. They keep doing like what do you call it? Like with the cameras on the side.
Dutch angle.
Yeah.
Dutch angle. There you go. Thank you. It's like everything's like a Dutch angle. It's supposed to be like kooky, but just really off-putting and bizarre.
Wasn't that Ron Howard or something?
That was
Ron Howard made
The
that.
Cat in the Hat is Bo Welch, who used to be Tim Burton's production designer.
Yeah, it's a production designer, and he was supposed to be doing the what's the German character that Mike Myers does on Saturday Night?
Dieter?
Sprockets.
Sprockets.
Yeah, he was supposed to do Sprockets, and then Mike Myers, like at the last minute, even though he wrote the script for everything, he pulled out like when they're deep in the pre-production. And Universal sued him and a bunch of things, and like basically their legal compromise was to make this Cat in the Hat movie because the Grinch did so well financially. So that's like the only reason why the Cat in the Hat exists, is because he was going to get sued for not making Sprockets for whatever reason.
I remember reading about Sprockets when they were talking about making a movie, and I was always a fan of the Sprockets sketch.
Right,
but
yeah.
even as young as I was when I was reading about it, I couldn't wrap my head around how the hell you would make a movie out of that.
I think Splitsider actually has an article about the actual script, because I think it's online. It's floating around somewhere, but I haven't read it. But I heard it's actually like pretty dark.
There are these YouTube channels popping up that we're getting so off topic. We'll get into Coco. Yeah. I just want to say people are making careers on YouTube out of just explaining leaked scripts now. Right. Yeah, scripts that were never made and shit. And it can be fascinating.
There's an entire podcast devoted to doing live dramatic readings of the Hollywood Blacklist.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ones that didn't get produced, or
yeah,
the ones,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, the Blacklist. For those who don't know, the Blacklist are basically screenplays that are there's this group that chooses them and says that these are the best unproduced screenplays of the year. And anyway, so now that we've gotten to know our newest contributor here, Will. We're going to go ahead and jump into our first review of the week, which we're going to be talking about Disney Pixar's Coco. So first of all, before I get into it further, I've seen Coco. Will, you've seen Coco?
Yeah, it's almost a month now, but I've seen it.
Yeah, same here. Although I did see it a second time about 2 weeks ago. Okay. And I know Bill Leon has seen it. First of all, I'll ask you, Will, on your level of Pixar movies, from the best to worst, where would Coco rank?
That's a good question. I actually haven't thought about where I would rank it. I'd say I might change my answer later, but I think I'd probably put it around the middle. I don't think it's quite as good as like my absolute favorites, which are like WALL-E and The Incredibles. Those are like the top tier. I don't think they're going to be shaken off anytime soon, but I'd put it above a lot of the recent ones that I felt kind of not maybe average on, but they were just like good, not great. Mm-hmm. This, like a lot of the ones that have come out post Toy Story 3, with the exception of Inside Out, have been fairly underwhelming. I think I reviewed it for Movie Boozer, so if you check it out on the site, you can read my thoughts in full. But yeah, I'm gonna say I'm around the middle. But to be in the middle of Pixar is not a slight at all. Like, being in the middle of Pixar means you're still a really good movie.
Yeah, I would argue that the only Pixar movie that I've seen with, by the way, I did not see Cars 3 and I never will.
It's okay.
The reason I will never see Cars 3 is because Cars 2 was a trash fire. And I'm a defender, by the way, of the first Cars.
I kind of like both car movies in a way that I just find them fascinating that they exist.
I actually legitimately think the first Cars has things that are worth defending in it.
Sure, yeah.
I'm a fan of of taking road trips, and I think the movie is like a real tribute to the all American road trip.
Right.
And that I really respect. There's elements that are not as good as, and it's certainly one of the weaker Pixar films. It's not Cars 2 though.
I would say if you liked Cars 1, you'll probably like Cars 3 at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's closer into that vein where it goes for like the Americana feel, and it's focused on Lightning McQueen again, which is good because
was he in the second one?
He was at the beginning because didn't they go to Japan?
It was it was the Larry the Cable Guy movie mostly.
Yeah, like they went to like Japan. He like literally like went off to do something, and then he's gone for like an hour.
It was sort of a globe-trotting thing because I think they were also in Paris at one point. They were at Monaco.
Michael Caine is in the film.
Is he? Yeah, I guess so.
The only thing Cars 2 had going for it is the most violent Pixar death ever, and it was Bruce Campbell who got killed.
Right, yeah, that's right. I forgot all about that.
They freaking
like run the guy's engine until he blows up.
Yeah. Isn't Cars 2 the one that has like the car with the like eyes where like the headlights would be? And
yes.
like they usually have like the eyes on the screen, like where the
windshield.
Yeah, windshield wiper. But there's like a shot where like Larry the Cable Guy's like, or not Larry the Cable Guy, Two Maters driver. Yeah, he's like driving some corridor, and he like looks over, and like there's this regular looking car, and then like his headlights come out, and they're like these eyes, like, who is there? And he like just runs away screaming, and that just raises a even more questions about the inconsistencies of this universe. Like, so wait, were these cars made? Do they exist? Like, were they just born cars? Like, you just never know with this universe, like, what's going on, except
the only,
obviously if you read the Pixar theory. But
right, the Pixar theory is I think the only way to look at it, which is
right.
this weird futuristic dystopia in which, you know, humanity is no longer in existence, and machinery has evolved into this monstrous thing, which is sentient cars for some reason.
Right.
Which I guess if you buy into the Rick and Morty theory of improbability, so to speak,
right,
it could happen. It's one of the possible universes.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have as many problems with the fact that they're cars. I just don't really get the nitty gritty details. And like, I know they're not connected, but like the Planes movies also they raise even more questions. That like
correction, the Dane Cook Planes movie.
Yeah. They're not technically Pixar movies. So they're not connected to the universe, but they just don't make any sense. But anyway, Coco.
So Coco, I would rank it pretty highly on my list of Pixar movies. First of all, I think I give this movie a lot of credit personally. I kind of rank it in the same category that I put Ratatouille, in that it's a movie that is just so passionate about its central subject matter that it feels just like this glowing, beautiful tribute. In the case of Coco, it's a tribute to Mexican culture, and it's a tribute to music and the love of music, and the difference between, becoming a popular musician and just being a good one, so to speak. And because in Coco there's the famous musician, and then there's the guy who did the actual work, the writing. And so, Ratatouille, on the other hand, is a love letter to two things: to food, which of course, who doesn't like food, but even more so, that final speech that the character Anton Ego has at the end is just the most beautiful soliloquy about criticism.
Right.
And that's the reason why I love Coco so much, because Ratatouille, by the way, is my favorite Pixar film for that reason. But Coco has that same level of love to it, where you can tell every small, minute detail was just put together by people who wanted to pay tribute to these themes that they were exploring. And anyway, so that's sort of my argument there.
I have a buddy who went to see this before I did.
Okay.
And I would argue with him constantly about Moana and this mother, because he's kind of a SJW type, like this has to be that. And he said to me about Coco, he was like, finally Disney didn't whitewash a movie. And I said to him, I was like, I don't really care as long as it's a good movie. Like, isn't that kind of the bottom line? Like, did you make a good movie? Did you tell a good story?
Well, all right, but the argument,
I mean, yes,
could be applied to movies like Matt Damon in The Great Wall.
It's another white dude telling me this, and so I'm just like, dude, I don't fucking care. Like, Moana was fine.
Did he think Moana was whitewashed?
Yes.
Because literally,
that's really ridiculous. Yeah,
he's a ridiculous person. He's a ridiculous person.
If you look at the voice cast, with the exception of I forgot who did the voice of the
Alan Tudyk.
Yeah,
Alan Tudyk.
With the exception of Alan Tudyk, every single person in that film who did a voice is a Pacific Islander of one form or another.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't buy that whitewashing thing about Moana.
Yeah, that's a weird argument to make. That's a weird hill to die on.
Yeah, no kidding. Coco, I mean, certainly I agree. I would agree that
this same guy, this same friend argues with my brother constantly about if Lilo and Stitch or Moana is better, and I'm like, can't they both just be good? Like,
right.
So
I don't know.
Coco. Yeah. Well, actually, no. Related here, Book of Life, Coco, both good. I got no complaints.
Book of Life, I felt, was a bit overrated, and I particularly didn't like the I particularly didn't like the way the movie kind of pop music up the sensibilities of the. It actually, both of these films have music as a central theme to them. The difference is in
the music in Coco is pretty fantastic. Maybe not so much the score, but when they're playing songs, it's just. I lit up like a Christmas tree.
I thought Michael Giacchino's score was excellent.
Yeah, I thought the score was pretty good.
Yeah, it complements.
I'm not bad-mouthing the score. I'm just saying it didn't stick out to me as much as the actual songs, or like they did that mariachi version of the Disney logo intro music.
Okay.
Which I thought that was cute.
So what did you in terms of Coco? What spoke to you in the movie, Bill? Anything in particular? Did I just
noise?
That's Hawk Ripshaw's phone texting him constantly.
It's all the way across the room. Okay.
Put it on mute or something.
Dude.
I just realized there's Bill, and Will on this podcast.
Oh, we're gonna get a three Bills show at some point. That's gonna happen when Hawk and Ken can't make it.
Three billboards outside of.
There you go. Yeah.
Three Williams.
Yeah, there you go.
I like Three Billboards. I like that one better, actually.
Maybe you could call it.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Bill's confused.
Outside. You could call it.
I'm thinking about the movie here, and the character.
Wow, you're just going to stomp on my.
Let someone talk.
Jeez.
Are we reviewing a movie or what? What is happening here?
Jesus.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
You joke,
and
you were in mid-thought.
He asked me about Coco. I'm trying to think about my answer. Shit.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're Hector, the character of Hector. I don't know. Like, I was enjoying the movie before he showed up, but once he showed up, and him and Miguel start to bond, and they are kind of forced to work together. That is when I was kind of officially sold on the film. I like the setup. I like. I think the voice actor who plays Miguel, it's kind of like a Mowgli live action Jungle Book situation where I'm just like, this kid probably doesn't have enough experience, but he's still doing a good job.
Okay. Well, I mean, I understand that, the kid, Anthony Gonzalez is the voice of...
It's an easy, cheap shot to criticize a child actor. I know that.
Well, to be fair, there are a lot of wonderful child actors out there. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a problem with his performance, but you are certainly... I mean, I'm not going to take you on in terms of Hector, because Gael Garcia Bernal is...
Oh, is that who voiced him? Okay.
Yeah. And actually, he voiced him in both the Spanish language and English language version of the film, mm-hmm. which I think is kind of an interesting mix. A few actors did that. I've heard tell that the Spanish language version of the movie is actually... I read an article that was defending it as superior to the English language version.
I heard that as well, yeah.
I would believe that.
Yeah, so I want to look that up for sure. But Bernal is a great actor, and I've been following his career for a while. Mm-hmm. And
you know, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know what my favorite joke regarding Bernal is? It was on an episode of American Dad, where Roger the alien is confronting Stan. Stan never lets him do things or get things that he wants. And he's like, you won't let me buy that Gael Garcia Bernal poster that I want. And the guy's like, Stan's like, that's irrelevant. That's not, necessary. And Roger's like, the guy's Spanish and he has green eyes. I need it. I was like, yeah, all right. You do you, Roger.
So, yeah, Coco though, which this is I just lost my train of thought. I am so sorry.
This was a wonderful movie. This was a wonderful film. Despite the fact that I opened my discussion with the whole whitewashing comment, like, this takes place in Mexico. It feels authentic to that culture. At no point does this really start to feel super Disney outside of the designs of the characters are kind of reminiscent of like other Pixar or Disney things. which I thought, again, it wasn't necessary to tell the story, but it like the things surrounding it really brought it all to life.
Can I just say that I loved the art design of the characters in the Land of the Dead? Like the skeleton design is very expressive, and the way the faces move, and the way the
when those characters first show up and they're constantly like someone will knock into them and the bones will fly over the place, that got a laugh out of me at least twice. And there's a part where there's like a guard and he sees Miguel who has skin and his jaw literally drops off of his face.
Yes.
That got a laugh out of me.
I really love the design of the skeletons, especially because considering this is a kid's film, it would have been really easy to make this like super scary. Like the fact they're just a bunch of skeletons walking around. This is totally a movie that can only exist in animation. But yeah, I mean, it had that right balance of being cartoony, but not too cartoony. Like cartoonish enough where you can get some cheap, but good laughs, and also, you know, get to know them as characters and stuff and feel for them. And so, yeah, I really did enjoy that design.
And speaking of feelings, this movie features what might be, in my opinion, one of the most emotionally heartbreaking scenes. For me, it's an easy contender to up. Towards the climax, when Miguel reawakens Mama Coco's memory. Speaking as someone who has a grandmother who's gone through several stages of dementia, there's this thing that dementia patients have where when they've mostly lost their memory and they're kind of just there. But sometimes they will be jarred by this sense memory thing that you'll see this look of
surprise,
recognition.
Recognition. There you go. This look of recognition on their face that is, it's like they come alive again, and it's this beautifully animated sequence where you just see every little crease in her face just fires on all cylinders, and suddenly, for a brief moment, she's able to speak completely coherently about something that she experienced, and it is, it's such a powerful moment, and having seen it in real life myself, the way the care they put into it was just heartbreaking. I have to say that easily one of the highlights of any Pixar film for me, that sequence.
Well, that third act made me tear up 2 different times. That was one. The other was kind of seeing the family all come together. I don't know if we're doing spoilers or not, so I'll try not to talk about that. But just
we'll call it light spoilers because we're not giving away major plot points. We're just saying things that we experienced.
When they all come together at the end as a family to, get done what they need to get done, and especially the great grandmother when she finally accepts what Miguel wants to do with his life and all that. Like it really got to me just because. I remember, everybody's gone through that where your family be like, oh, you guys maybe get it. Like, don't write these movie reviews. Go be a dentist or something. I don't know.
Go be a
Kirby
dentist.
doesn't like to make toys.
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny, both of those sequences that you guys are talking about, that specifically that Bill brought up, the one with the memory and the one with the family getting together, reminds me of another topic of tonight's discussion, which will be Rhapsody Street Kids.
Oh no!
There are 2 scenes in that.
We will.
Yes, we will get to it.
Will be.
Yes, we will get to it. Yes, absolutely. But it reminds me of 2 very funny sequences and very odd sequences in that particular video, which we will bring up at a later point.
That's a wonderful teaser for the end of the episode.
I like that you called it a video because it looks like a music video for Money for Nothing.
It's a video. I mean, what else do you want to call it? Yeah. I wouldn't call it a film.
TV.
I just want to say the Money for Nothing is better animated.
It is.
Yeah, I think it's technically a TV special, but I think video is more apt a description. It just sort of exists.
So I think we've spoken about Coco enough here.
I don't. Here's the thing. Normally, we would probably have a much deeper discussion about this and go into spoilers and this and that. I think this movie benefits from seeing it not blind, but you don't want to know the major twists and turns that are going to come with the story.
And this is a benefit for those who haven't seen it yet. And I will say, just quick comment about the 21-minute Disney short. Personally, while I'm not going to say that it was good, it wasn't. I'm glad Disney was trying something to add value to the ticket, because personally,
I do enjoy it when studios put a short presentation before the feature. You rarely get that anymore, and that's nice. But what they did, from what I heard, wasn't matching the quality of the main production or even the studio.
It's going to be a fucking Christmas special. That's what it was.
Right, yeah. That was supposed to air on television, the Frozen thing. But I had heard, and I'm sure you guys have all heard this too, that it was kind of haphazardly put in front of Coco because they were afraid that Coco might not appeal to an English-speaking audience as much, even though the movie's in fucking English.
I have heard that. I don't know that would be true. I think it was it was Christmas season. They wanted.
Frozen was
the worst. I mean, that's highly possible, but I don't want to say that.
My cynicism is getting the better of me. Yes.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say about it. Yes, it wasn't that great. First time I saw it, I didn't mind it all that much. But when I saw it the second time, when I went to see Coco again, that's when I started to notice just how much it can drag. And
bottom line, you know who loves Frozen? White chicks.
Jeez.
Okay.
I don't know about G's, because I mean that's
Bill. I'm just going to say,
was that a mean thing to say?
No, what I'm saying is you won the "You Went There" award for this.
But
I mean, was this short better or worse than Lava?
No, Lava.
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead, Will.
No, I was just gonna say, Lava is one of those good bad shorts where I can understand why people don't like it at all, but I just love knowing that Pixar spent, I don't know, like what, $20 million to make an entire 10-minute short just based on one really bad pun.
Yeah.
Just the audacity that went into that is, to me, just a beautiful thing.
See, in my mind,
a beautifully animated, terrible pun.
The only way that could have ended better would be if by the end the volcano was just one giant middle finger, and then they
fuck you, starving kids.
But on that note, I will say, even though I understand where you're coming from, Bill A., where I appreciate the fact they want to put something before their movies. I think the fact they sacrificed having an actual original Pixar short before the movie and put just this in there instead. Before Cars 3, they had one called Lou, which isn't my favorite Pixar short. I mean, I think it's noticeably weaker than most of their other ones. And the fact they got an Oscar nomination over Don Hertzwitz's World of Tomorrow 2 is pretty BS. I don't know. Can we swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Of course.
Already been swear?
Yeah, I was going to say that's bullshit. Yeah, I mean, I would. That said, I'd much rather have like a 6-minute original Pixar short, no matter what it is, be it Lava 2 or whatever, than a 22-minute Frozen short.
Lava 2. This is where they go through a divorce.
Why can't we have another Jerry's Game?
I was literally going to make a joke and say they should make a sequel to that, but really, he'd be dead, wouldn't he?
Wasn't that
Jerry?
Jerry.
Jerry.
Well, he was in Toy Story 2.
That is true. That is true.
I don't know. I mean,
so
I like to think he's still alive.
So my line of thinking here is, and I've mentioned this on the Pubcast before, but I've just got to bring it up again. Is I'm a big fan of Leonard Maltin, and Leonard Maltin hosted for a few DVD releases the Warner Brothers Classic Collections, where you can watch the special feature called Night at the Movies that recreates the experience of watching a movie in the 1940s and what it would be like if you went to the theater.
Okay.
And in the 1930s and 40s, if you went to the theater, long before the movie began, you would get a couple of cartoons, you would get newsreels, you would get usually a two-reeler comedy, and sometimes a 3 or 4 reeler short film, and then the feature would begin. So it would turn your film experience into like a 3.5 hour kind of thing, and people were okay with that, and you got this great, it was sort of like, putting on a show. You got all of these different experiences. Yes, I fully acknowledge this is never going to happen again, because that's not cost effective.
They'd rather put Sprite commercials in place.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would say
I get that.
As much as I would love that, I love going to movies. I love sitting in the theater and just turning my phone off and ignoring the world. I think the fact that we are in the 21st century where the people have so many distractions, I just don't think they have the patience or the interest to really stay in the theater for more than 2 hours at a time, unless it's like a Marvel movie. That's me being cynical, but
oh no, it's you being absolutely right, and me being a idealist
right.
who, it would be a beautiful thing. It's never going to happen. So what I'm saying is, getting these shorts, these Disney shorts or Pixar shorts before the movie, is a little taste of that. And I've even though I wasn't a fan of it, I was glad to pay money for a movie and get 20 minutes extra that I wasn't expecting. I had no idea the Disney short was even going to appear before the movie. I didn't do any research. I knew a short would, because it was a Pixar film, but while I didn't like it, I can't help but feel a little bit nostalgic and feel like this is kind of like what it would be,
This is like an Olaf centric short, right? Like he's kind of he's the main character. Okay, so going into Frozen, I expected to be super annoyed by that character, and I wasn't. I don't want to call him endearing, but he wasn't annoying, which is what I was expecting.
It's not that character that makes the short suck.
Mm-hmm.
What it really is the fact that the songs are not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of them. In fact,
I was going to say, how many songs can you cram into 20 minutes?
I believe there's 5 of them.
Oh,
jeez.
Yeah.
2 minutes, like 2 minutes each, 5 songs. It's like 10 minutes of fucking runtime right there.
Oh yeah, it's solid. I would say 2/3 of this is singing.
I am so glad I did not go to see this yet, because I would fucking walk out and pay someone to stand in there and come get me when it was over.
I heard a lot of horror stories from like theater employees who just had to deal with all this nonsense.
Because I totally understand. In both showings I was there, I heard kids who were confused saying, "I thought we were going to see Coco."
Right.
So maybe Disney.
Shut up and sit down. We're watching Frozen 2 tonight.
Here's a question: would it hurt Disney to add to the trailer for these movies, like and featuring a short film?
I was going to say, like on TV spots, they might have advertised that.
Back in the 90s, they used to do that with double features. And,
right.
I remember. You guys remember Pixar? What was it? It started with A Bug's Life, right? Like it came out and then they put it back into theaters with a blooper reel like a few weeks later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Monsters, Inc. did that too.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't just back in theaters. That was when it first came out, right? It was played during the end credits.
You know what I mean? Like they added shit to the movie that was already out.
It was. Yeah, I remember that. It was released in one form, and they added a couple of things. But and then of course, once again, me playing the idealist. Remember, this is the America that walked out after one movie in Grindhouse because they didn't look at the poster.
Oh, really?
So, anyway,
poor Death Proof.
I'm done. I'm done defending the concept, because I think we're all kind of on the same page anyway.
I honestly kind of want.
I would be opposed to them advertising what the movie at the beginning is. Because part of the novelty of a new Pixar movie back in the day was, I wonder what neat little short they're going to have beforehand. And
Jerry's Game was the one, like that was the apex for me. Because after that with Monsters, Inc., they had like this thing with birds on a telephone wire. Does anybody remember that?
For the birds.
Yeah, for the birds.
Yeah,
that wasn't
good
very good, was it?
I like it.
I like
Yeah,
it. Yeah, I like
great.
Flipper.
I haven't. Oh, let me reiterate. I haven't seen it in like 10 years, but I was not with then. So
Check it out.
I think
YouTube.
the
It's
fact that
pretty
they
good.
made it and exist. Oh, go ahead.
Not just saying, check it out on YouTube. It's pretty good. It holds up.
okay. I
I
would
would
be
the fact that the short before Coco, which I have not seen, the fact that it is an existing brand, I think cheapens the novelty of having a fun little short before a Pixar feature.
And I totally agree with that. I think the best shorts are the ones like I mean with I believe was Piper with
Finding Dory.
yeah, Finding Dory. Piper I thought was a better film than Finding Dory was like a whole feature.
Right.
And then you have, like One Man Band was fun.
Yeah.
Presto, the one with the rabbit, was great. Day and Night was really creative in its blend of 2D and 3D effects. Yeah, and the thing that Pixar used to do with the shorts that they don't seem to do as much anymore is it used to be that the short felt like kind of a tech demo for new animation types of animation. That's what the Partly Cloudy one was all about, because that one they were testing with basically it was created as a test going into Up of their cloud technology and the realism of it.
I think some of that tech demo feeling shorts would have predated Disney's acquisition of Pixar, right? So after that, they had more resources and less stuff they needed to shop around.
And wasn't there another one kind of like that? It wasn't for a Pixar one. I think it was called Paperman. I think it was before Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, was it? Okay, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was
The
nominated for best short film.
But that was like another test because they were trying to do like 2D behind 3D or something like that.
Did
if I remember
Paperman
correctly.
win the Oscar that year for best animated short?
No.
Okay, I don't remember if it did or not, but
I would applaud you if you remember what shorts won best animated shorts many years ago. But
it definitely wasn't Home. Oh my God! So Ken and I went to see Peabody and Sherman, and they played before the movie Home existed. I guess they were shopping that character around, and they had a little short with him in it. Complete waste of time.
I think it's called Almost Home or something like that.
Ah, okay. That was no. That was just no. That
was the whole movie Home. You guys know how much I hated that one.
Oh, I know, and I believe I have yet to watch it just because of your ire, your resentment of it.
Can I just say, Hawk, that if you've gone to Netflix recently, I'm sure you know that Home is a cartoon series now.
Yeah, it's an animated series now.
Yeah,
so is Peabody and Sherman.
What?
Yeah, like all three of us were talking at once, and okay.
Too many cooks.
Hawk, you go.
I tried watching it once.
And
it was horrible.
Watch the Peabody and Sherman animated series, which I believe got fucking canceled by Netflix. It's the only one of these 2D DreamWorks translations that I've seen that's any good. Although I've heard that the Turbo one is okay. I don't, these shows aren't for me. I just like Rocky and Bullwinkle, so.
So the Disaster Artist.
Yeah. Jay Ward, the Disaster Artist.
So first of all, Disaster Artist.
I say this though? Hold on, wait. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys realize this or remember, but the book, The Disaster Artist, released around the time that we started recording together.
Oh, so it's kind of an anniversary type thing?
It was kind of right around the same time, and I'm pretty sure, like, for the entire time we've been doing this podcast, we would always bring up, like, oh, James Franco is making the Room movie, and we would... I just remember that. I remember the news had broke around the time that we had all met and started recording together.
Wasn't it supposed to be called something else, like the worst movie ever made? Or
the Masterpiece.
Yeah, at one point... It was called, the movie was going to be called The Masterpiece. So,
and I don't like that title. I prefer
at my screening, they were handing out tuxedo T-shirts and Tommy's Planet pens. Remember that scene where he gives the pen? He's like, "Yeah, you belong to Tommy's Planet."
Is that a thing that happened? Because who has read or listened to the audio version of the entire book?
I have.
I have the book, but I haven't read it.
I read it. Yeah, I've read the book.
Okay, I've listened to bits and pieces of the audiobook. I have not read or heard the entire thing.
Okay. So if you've read the entire book, what I'm going to say then, for the purposes of this review, you will be our expert.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Pressure's on.
I will admit, I've also seen The Room several times. I also read at least a version of the scripts for The Room, so I'm pretty...
I have a copy of The Room on DVD, which I did not pay for because fuck Tommy Wiseau and his little money-grubbing ass. Excuse me.
Whoa. He's just kidding.
Come get me, Trump.
What?
I also...
I came across an interesting theory on The Room last night that
you did.
Denny is a cat.
Denny is their pet cat.
Okay, so go into details. I need to know this.
So because Denny just kind of like comes and goes as he pleases, as a cat would, and then of course when they go upstairs at the very beginning to have like that 8-minute long sex scene with the fucking terrible song, Denny just follows them up and hops onto the bed and they're just totally chilled with it. What?
Yeah,
I was singing the song from the movie.
Oh, and then he just kind of like. The part with the robber and stuff isn't really congruent with that theory, but the fact that
I was gonna say how that imagining like a cat for the what kind of money scene would be pretty weird, but for the opening words,
but it's a weird like it's almost like allegorical for him being the pet, and then somebody was asking Tommy Wiseau what the purpose of Denny was, and he just was like everything happens for a reason, no more questions.
In the script for The Room, he goes by a different character, but he's actually Lisa's younger brother, and he's like the most stereotypically gay character I've ever seen in my entire life. And the Chris R is actually his pimp, and he was like turning tricks, and he didn't get money for him, so that's why he was barging him up there.
Wow.
That's actually marginally more complex than I would have expected from Tommy Wiseau.
And also, I mean, have you heard about that, like what actually is supposed to happen in the script in that scene with Johnny?
No.
All right. So in the script version of that scene, Chris R is, badgering Denny, and all of a sudden Mark, Lisa, and Claudia come up. And they get the gun pointed at them. And Chris R is threatening all four of them. And then out of nowhere, in like a big white Lamborghini comes flying in the air is Johnny.
What?
He comes out with
the air.
Yeah. He pulls his head out, fangs are out, and he goes in this big long monologue like, I have 3 master's degrees. Like this, he's saying it doesn't make any sense. Suddenly, Chris R is floating in the air. He goes into the car. Johnny flies the car away. And then he comes back with like a little bit of blood on his lip, and he wipes that off. And then the scene where they're in the tuxedos, they were going to Chris R's funeral to prove to themselves that he was actually dead. So that's
what? That sounds awesome.
That sounds like Xavier Renegade Angel.
I will say that it sounds like a better use of a flying DeLorean than Ready Player One. Shots fired.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I'm actually reading that book right now.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry for you.
How is it? I've heard it's terrible.
Yeah.
The book? I don't know. It's like actually, I mean, I'm only like 20 pages into it, but it's supposed to be like more of like an online critique than people are like the pages that people take out are really like out of context.
I've seen, me and Will are in a Red Letter Media Facebook group, and I've seen people share little snippets from the book, and it's just like reference.
Yeah, I will say it's not quite that. I'm not going to say it's a great book, but it's a lot more purposeful than, hey, let's get Chucky and the DeLorean in the movie together, and we'll play the Black the Future theme, and it's the Iron Giant. It's not quite that.
I popped for that Iron Giant cameo.
Okay. I haven't watched the trailer yet. I just saw that screenshot, and someone was like, is this the motherfucking Iron Giant?
Yeah, I popped super hard for that, but
have you guys seen the poster? Have you guys seen the poster with the long leg?
Oh, the leg, yeah.
The fucking leg.
It's almost as bad as the Tomb Raider poster where her neck is just twisted like 70 degrees to look at.
Hey, she met up with Superman before they took that picture, and he, snapped her neck.
He thought she was General Zod?
Yeah.
I want to give credit. I want to give credit to a person I follow on Twitter, Angie Hahn, because she posted a picture of those 2 posters, and she just was like, has Warner Brothers even seen a person before?
Yeah, I retweeted
like
that
the idea of like just the idea of like this guy with like a super long leg and like a centaur lady just walking around like selling these movies.
I don't know if any
of us somebody else
are...
that was like
so now that we know
such explains why that poster works.
Yeah, I don't.
There's a Twitter thread that explains that like I guess because he's like rotated a certain way, it's really complex. I mean, like even if like that explains it, it's way too complex. Like they had to know like that most people look at the poster and be like that doesn't look right. Like it I mean, even if it is atomically correct, which I still don't really buy.
This is going to be a
rocky.
This is going to be a bit of a rocky discussion of the disaster artist, because again, since we've been recording for years together, and I've been looking forward to this film, wary of James Franco being the one in the director's chair, but looking forward to this movie for a really long time. Then I finally got to watch it on Monday, and I left the theater feeling very underwhelmed. I didn't hate it. I wanted to love it, but I didn't love it. And honestly, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the movie's fault, but the script for this thing is kind of a fluff piece.
It's a bit shallow, I would say, especially compared to the book, which fleshes out a lot more things and makes it a lot more interesting.
In the book, and you've read the whole book. I've only heard little snippets and pieces, but in the book, he comes off as just such a manipulative piece of shit.
It depends what part of the book, but yeah, there are certain parts where he is very manipulative and very just downright cruel at times. And there are other scenes where he's actually very loving, very sweet. And that's the thing, is that Tommy Wiseau, I mean, whatever you think of the guy, he's a very complex individual. And a lot of that comes from the fact that he is such an enigma. You just don't really know who Tommy is. And that's something the movie plays up to a good bit. They try to capitalize on that mystery, mostly with the three central questions to Tommy's character, which are A, where does he come from? B, how old is he? And C, where did he get all this money?
Yeah.
And I think I think it's determined that he's from Poland.
That's what I've heard.
So is that definitive? Is there proof of this?
There isn't any. I mean, they haven't posted his like birth certificate or anything. But I mean, I really. Do you think there's like a birther movement for Tommy Wiseau?
We should totally start that.
If it is,
I love being in New Orleans resident. Everyone in the audience at my screening popped big time every time he said, "I'm from New Orleans, the Chalmette area." Yeah, that's where I'm from.
What do you think it means, Hawk?
Popped, cheered, applauded.
Okay, because every time I hear popped, I think
me and Bill A throw wrestling terms around. It's fine.
Yeah, I literally thought you guys
were making it. Go ahead.
All right, Hawk, you were talking.
Okay. I think he's dealing with a crying child. Is that what I heard in the background?
I'm not dealing with anyone. It's not on my sound.
I'm not.
I didn't mean you. Anyway, so
was it me?
No, I thought pop was referring to a boner.
Nope.
No,
I mean, you could take it that way. Sure, the entire
I popped a boner. My penis popped.
No. But to be fair, Hawk, you could also think popped means taking a pill. Or maybe your mind is
like, oh, I saw Tommy Wiseau, so I took my vitamins.
Or you could be a bro and you could pop your collar.
That's not a
right.
bro
Exactly.
thing.
There's but no, you thought boner. That's where you went.
That's where he went.
What are you
just like? No.
So, Bill L., I wanted to know.
Artist.
Yeah, I mean, even though you were underwhelmed with the film, what did you think of James Franco's performance as Tommy?
Honestly, I liked it because it rode the line of not being a blatant impression, which as a fan of the room, I have been doing God knows how long. Hi Mark, everybody has their Tommy voice that they do. Yes, exactly. And James Franco's performance actually felt like a performance. Like he did his best to not make this go into blatant impression.
No, I agree 100%. I think that's one of the strengths of the movie is that it never feels like he's just doing a straight impression, nor does it feel like he's losing what makes Tommy so weird. Like, even though, like, I agree with you that the script doesn't fully flesh out Tommy as much as I would like, I think James Franco brings such an inner warmth to his Tommy, and he brings a sincerity to his plight that he never makes it just a comedic character. He never makes him just like a goofball that's like fumbling his way into this movie. You can understand where he's coming from. You can understand his plight. And I think that's a really big benefit to his film is that he finds that nice balance in a way that makes the movie connectable to anyone who isn't that familiar with The Room or maybe only knows it in passing.
Yeah,
as well as people who have watched it endlessly and know all the mannerisms and quirks and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and it's like James Franco has kind of developed a reputation over the past decade of being kind of eccentric.
Yeah.
So
he's very prolific.
Yeah, it's super strange. Like that is probably the most compelling thing about the film.
You could call him a narcissist. I think that's fair.
I do, okay. Yeah, and he probably. I'm not even going to go there.
And you could call Tommy a narcissist too.
Yeah.
So in a way, they're kindred spirits. Yeah.
Well, that's I agree 100%. I think that's a big benefit to the film, and that's why I think this is James Franco's first good film as a director. I mean, it took him like 16 times, but
I enjoyed Interior Leather Bar.
I actually haven't seen that one. Fair.
That's just me though.
And I heard his Saturday Night Live documentary is okay.
Who has seen films he's directed? Because
I have. I've seen as I Lay Dying. I saw his adaptation of that. I saw Child of God, which was terrible.
Yep, that was bad.
And I saw his directorial debut, which is The Ape. Which is
what about the one where the guy bangs a dead body?
That could be Child of God.
You had.
No, it wasn't Child of God.
No, that really happened. That really happened in a movie of his. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was.
Was that the was that the Broken Tower? I saw that one too.
No, I'm gonna Google James Franco banging a dead person.
Oh wait, is that the Sound of the Fury?
No.
That's where he pulled like a Tropic Thunder and just like went all like what was Ben Stiller's character and that like
I don't remember his character's name, but
no, but the movie that he made that he was like going for like the I Am Sam Oscar nom.
Simple
and
Jack. Yeah.
I was like, I saw the trailer and I got flashbacks.
Happy.
I remember
Herbert
the trailer
White.
reminded me of that. So, Herbert White.
Yeah.
That's a movie title.
Yeah, Herbert White. It's based on a poem, and it starred Michael Shannon.
Oh.
Basically, like he finds his dead body in the woods, and he keeps bringing his family to the woods under the false pretense of getting supplies, whatever. And really, he's just sneaking off to bang this dead body and like having to go every once in a while.
Oh my God!
Wait, was this a short
film? Dave Franco.
we're just skipping that conversation.
God bless Dave Franco. He's trying. But he never felt like Greg Sestero to me in this movie. He felt like Dave Franco.
No, he if anything, he was the one that felt like the impersonation or the impression.
Here's what I'm going to say about Dave Franco. I think a big thing that hurt my acceptance of his performance had nothing to do with his actual performance and everything to do with what might be the shittiest dye job I've ever seen in a movie that was supposed to be taken seriously. They dyed his hair nuclear orange.
Yeah.
And his beard, by the way, which from what I've seen in production photos is it looks like an actual beard that he grew, but god damn it looks fake as hell.
Oh,
yeah. It looks like they took a teddy bear and just cut off some of his fur and just glued it to his face.
And I think that it made it hard for me to buy into his performance just because I kept looking at it and thinking, did anyone tell James Franco that, maybe your brother is not getting the best makeup job? Like someone in the makeup department should.
I will say that I think the hair and makeup in this movie is generally not that great.
Yeah,
I think, with the exception of Tommy Wiseau's wig, which looks passable, I think.
I was gonna say, yeah, for some reason that works on him. Like,
I think it's because Tommy Wiseau's hair is obviously dyed and like not real or not completely real. It makes sense that his wig doesn't look 100% real. But like the wig they got for Lisa doesn't look convincing. The haircut for Denny doesn't look right. Like most of the hair is.
Oh, Josh Hutcherson looks like he's wearing a wig in this fucking movie.
Right. But most people look like they're wearing wigs. And I remember when I saw the movie, one of the words I said was it was a little clumsy, in the same way that The Room is clumsy. And I think that's what I meant, was that there are some like details here that like are oddly like kind of lazy in a way that maybe some of James Franco's other movies can be a little lazy, because he's just trying to like direct as many things as possible. And he's just
but
like,
this is you hear them. You hear the people that worked on this film talk about it in the press, like it's Seth Rogen and everybody else, and they're like, yeah, James he was really passionate about this. He really buckled down and this and that. And you watch the movie and you're like, it's kind of flat directing, and the actors that are giving good performances this isn't the first time they've given good performances. They've acted in other shit before. This is their job. Like,
I wouldn't say it's flat direction. I'd say it's simple direction, because I think most of his other movies, like as bad or whatever as they are, they're a lot more like he's trying to do a lot of different things in his other movies. I think for the most part they don't work. This is just it's mostly just a conventional biopic for this film, and I think he just kind of restrained himself in a way that I think ultimately works. But I can see where you're coming from, where it's not a film filled with like a lot of flair or anything like that. I mean, it looks more or less like the average Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg film of late.
Yeah, well, but I had really wanted, as I was watching the film, thought to myself, like, how would this have turned out if it was in the hands of a different director that has experience with something on this scale before? Because James Franco, I've never seen any movie he's directed. I've never heard of any movie he's directed. He just, because he's got money and he's a fucking Hollywood star, he can just shoot to the top of the food chain, and now he's directing this movie, which is it's a cult product.
Not unlike Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, I was just about to say that's exactly like Tommy Wiseau, so I think that's kind of perfect.
I guess, but it didn't. In theory, like the story, like if I were to tell you the story of the making of The Disaster Artist, that's perfect. But when you watch the movie, it just leaves so much to be desired.
So I just want to give my 2 cents on my overall impressions of the movie. I enjoyed The Disaster Artist while I was watching it, but the more I think about it, the more I find it wanting in retrospect. There's a lot of things that that the film doesn't explore that it should have in more detail.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think and I think it was a mistake. As much as as Dave Franco tried, and I think it was a mistake to cast his brother to play a person who's not his brother.
Well,
I didn't mind that.
That's an interesting argument, but I actually kind of liked the chemistry between James and Dave.
I could see it. Yeah. I'm not opposed to that.
And I like the fact that they are brothers, and that they were playing two characters that are somehow drawn together almost through serendipity, and they go through this crazy conflict of making this movie and having these two different careers, and trying to be individuals while also maintaining their friendship and everything. I think that brought an interesting dynamic that probably repeats itself in real life when it comes to both of them in some ways.
Yeah,
and that, especially in the more insecure moments that the characters have. Greg in the movie is more insecure in the beginning, and as it goes on, he kind of grows some confidence. Tommy is in the beginning, he's the one that seems like he's got it all together, kind of, in terms of talent anyways. Well, the talent that Greg perceives, or the spirit that Greg perceives in him.
Talent is a generous word, but
talent's a very generous word. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, like
confidence.
When
it's what you mean.
Confidence, yes. Yeah. When he sees him in the theater and he sees him doing the Stella bit, it's not good, but he loves that spirit that he's bringing to it, that passion. So that's what attracts him to him. But as the movie goes on, Tommy becomes more and more insecure. He sees Greg moving forward in his life. He sees Greg dating. He sees Greg, getting other jobs and stuff. And so that relationship, and even more so, puts a damper on Tommy's overall mood until the very, very end, of course. But that was interesting to boil it all down. I'm sure the book is much more complicated. It's much more, has many more details with regards to their relationship and what makes Tommy tick, perhaps. But to boil it down to, this was Tommy and Greg being their friendship, and Tommy feeling maybe not homoerotic towards Greg. I've read some theories about that, but I didn't see that completely. I saw it more as Tommy just wanting a friend, someone to relate to and relate with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that's more present in the book than it is in the movie. I heard that there was some stuff like that in the movie, but that was cut out. There's only, I think, one scene where they kind of hint at, like, they hint very apparently about the homoeroticism. It's a scene where they first go to the apartment, and like, there's like a scene where he like walks right up to him, and like there's like a moment of tension where you just don't really know what's gonna happen. Like, he grabs his apartment, they're alone.
Yeah, I saw that more as Tommy just being a weird guy. Like,
well, I mean,
there was an episode of Seinfeld, for example, where Judge Reinhold plays a character that goes right up to people's faces.
The close talker, yeah.
The close talker, right. Yeah. And I saw it more as that, like someone who doesn't recognize they're being socially awkward.
No, I can see that. I think from a filmmaking standpoint, I think that was like James Franco like hinting at that, like, maybe
he didn't do it well then, because I got something completely different with it. But maybe they're going for that a little bit. I don't know. I mean, that's
at least that's how I read it. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn for James Franco. That's just how I read it, at least. So.
No, of course, yeah. But it's intriguing how, going back to the chemistry between the two, and how we can bring out different interpretations as far as the characters' relationships with one another.
Isn't there a line in the film where they're like, "Oh, you love Greg because he's what you want to be. He's the all-American boy," or some shit? Is that? Am I thinking of something like else?
That. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's something like that in there, and that was said a little too bluntly. I think the movie was already doing a good job at that point of expressing that without having to flat out state it.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes it's okay to express that verbally. I mean, that's not a nitpick or anything. That's just something I noticed that they didn't have to technically do. The movie was doing a good enough job just by putting the two together in a room with each other.
Yeah,
it was clear Tommy wanted to be Greg, and Greg wanted what Tommy had.
Has anybody here seen Jack and Jill?
I have, yeah.
Jack and Jill opens with twins talking about twins on this black background, and that's what the opening of this reminded me to, where it's the celebrities talking about
so awkward. I did not like that opening.
I did not like that opening. I did not like how it ended with the fucking stupid ass side by side, like, look what we did, we love the room. Like,
I've heard a explanation as to why they did that, and the reason being is in test screenings, apparently the people who were going to the test screenings did not believe that this actually happened. They just couldn't wrap their head around it.
There's a book, there's a movie, you can find it. I mean, it's no secret.
Even so, I mean, audiences, especially mass audiences who just go to movies to eat popcorn and shut their brains off, which isn't a bad thing. That's just escapism. They may not be aware of this, of this cult hit. So that was an okay move. It wasn't the best move, but it was okay.
I think the way they went about it was wrong, but I understand the motive.
Well, here's my question.
I did like the finale, the end credit stinger where Tommy meets Tommy.
Oh, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that
in a second.
I just think that the people making this movie were maybe a little too in love with the room, a little too close to it, because this is a big fat circle jerk. Like, isn't the room great? Isn't it wonderful? Adam Scott loves it. Keegan-Michael Key is a big fan. Kevin Smith.
I would say, I agree where you're coming from, but I think it's better than the alternative, which is them like just plain laughing at these people and being like, haha, look at these dumb jerks. They just made this terrible movie. We're Hollywood insiders, and we are laughing at your puny little effort. I think,
and I completely agree with you. We needed some kind of happy middle ground here,
right?
Because
I did find it amusing that the entire cast of the "How Did This Get Made" podcast appeared.
Oh yeah. That was a nice little touch.
That was a nice little touch. And to add to this, isn't the movie the movie itself, The Disaster Artist, doesn't it kind of play out in a similar way to The Room in terms of like the character of Johnny? In The Room, everyone's saying how great Johnny is and how wonderful of a person he is. In The Disaster Artist, the style of the movie is more like the filmmaker saying, wow, isn't The Room great? Like what you're saying, Bill Leon. So isn't that kind of like there's a connection there, maybe, you know, to
I just feel like they really,
maybe that's tenuous. I don't know, but
it feels full of itself. And I'm kind of leading up to talking about the scene of the premiere of The Room, which I do want to ask Will about since he has read the book.
Right.
I don't know if you guys are ready to talk about that yet. If you have other stuff,
yeah, let's get into that.
The premiere. How did it happen in the book, Will?
All right. So the thing about the book is that I actually really enjoy the ending of the book because it just ends. So Tommy, he gives this big passionate speech similar to in the film, but except in the film, he just goes like, "This is my movie, this is my life." Like he just kind of, it's like one or two lines, but in the book, he's like basically on the verge of tears, like explaining what's about to happen. And then he sits down, the movie's about to start, and Greg looks over at Tommy and he's like actually crying. And he's like, well, no matter what happens, no matter what comes from here, because Greg obviously knows that it's a bad movie. He's like, you know, no matter what, my friend made this movie. He accomplished it. He went against all the odds and he made this film. And so he gave him kind of the best ending he could give, which is this bittersweet farewell. Like, this is the happiest ending I can give you. The movie starts, you know, from here that the movie sucks. It's considered one of the worst movies ever made. And so it cuts off on that like kind of nice, perfect, bittersweet moment. And I wish the movie ended the exact same way.
Listening to you describe that, not even seeing it visually, that was more compelling of a character moment than anything in the, or not a character moment, but a character interaction.
Right.
That was way more compelling. Just listening to you describe that to me than any of the character interactions that I got out of The Disaster Artist.
Well, I compare the ending premiere of the movie when everyone starts laughing and reacting to the film. I compare that to, believe it or not, the Oliver Stone film W. There's a scene in that movie. There's a scene in that movie that didn't actually happen, but it was a dramatized version. What it was the characters, the main characters, are in the war room essentially, and they're debating on what to do about Iraq and Afghanistan and what their next move is. And each character lays out in complete exposition their own personal philosophy and morality towards what Bush is about to ultimately decide. And obviously, this one scene did not actually happen the way it did in real life. It's really just an amalgamation of various different moments during the presidency. So I compare it to that in the premiere sequence at the end of The Disaster Artist, it's more like a combination of years of this movie playing at this one theater and people slowly starting to catch on to the fact that this is a weird movie and we should be, you know, we should start enjoying it maybe, you know, for that.
So you're saying that sequence was symbolic of the entire time frame that the film took to catch on as a cult film?
Yes, that's my opinion on that.
I don't like that.
That's how I...
To be honest with you, you know what maybe would have made the movie a little better for me is if Wayne and Garth popped up and said, let's do the Ed Wood ending.
Okay.
Because that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. You can't, there's no getting around that. That's exactly what it is.
This wasn't the Ed Wood ending. The Ed Wood ending was much more dramatized and romantic, I felt. But
I suppose, but even this, it just feels like a fucking circle jerk. Like, this didn't happen this way. And I know that's, with Ed Wood, that's not how it happened either. But Ed Wood earned that ending.
Sure. I mean, Ed Wood's one of the best movies ever made. So no contest.
It's unfair to compare it, but you, like, whoever the writers on this were, I don't even know if that's in the script or if James Franco made this decision, but it's like, you know where you got that idea, and it was from
I'm not even going to say that it's unfair, because the two, the comparison is, it's very fair to compare two films that are about the making of a bad film.
Yeah. Well, no, I think Ed Wood is about the making of 3 bad films, but yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. What I will say though is, you know, stylistically they're completely different, and it's just the thematic element of the bad films. I would actually say that even above Ed Wood, my favorite movie about bad filmmaking is American movie.
And even and even one could argue that Coven isn't actually poorly made. Coven was actually had some style to it, and
not only that,
I'm not going to make that argument. Coven is garbage.
Well, I don't know. I think it had a little bit of flair.
And by the way, it's Coven.
It is.
Oh, that's right, Coven. I'm sorry. Oh God,
Coven sounds like Coven.
Coven sounds like Coven. Right? Exactly. I just made that fucking mistake.
No, but like, okay, so American movie. The premiere, I don't really remember what happens at the premiere of his film in that, but he
was exhausted and tired, but he brought his family out, his friends.
The ending of that is a little bittersweet, isn't it? Like the ending of the film is like Mark is still broke, Uncle Bill is dead.
Yes, but Uncle Bill leaves him money in his will to continue doing his filmmaking. So there's the movie really ends on a note of look at this guy as a person. You know, he's surrounded by friends and family that care about him. He cares about them. He's generally sweet, and he has a dream. You know, that's
American movie. Yeah, that's a fantastic film, and I love it so much. But even like look at the movie about the making of Sweetback, Badass.
Oh yeah, Badass is a good one.
That's a great movie.
That movie, that movie's like dramatized, and it's clearly not what actually happened, but it earns it because it portrays like I can't even think of like a specific.
Before you say it's clearly not what actually happened, first of all, Mario Van Peebles directed the movie, and the movie's based on his dad's father.
Right, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that didn't happen because
a lot of those stories that he tells in that movie really did in fact go down. In fact, I think the dad even spells it out in the book about his career.
Have you guys watched Sweetback's Badass Song? Is that a bad movie? Because I could not get through it.
I haven't watched it. I've only seen Badass.
As a person who when I was in college, I went through like an entire year and a half where I was in a total blaxploitation mode. And so
did you watch Black Mama, White Mama?
You know what? I actually haven't seen that one. That's
they showed it on TCM Underground a few weeks ago. That's why I brought it up.
Good to know. But Sweetback's Badass Song is not what I would call a good movie.
Yeah, it's really not.
It's roguish. It's renegade.
Oh yeah.
It's a movie that is
defiant.
To go into some film school 101 here, I had a professor in college who explained appreciation of film in a 3-tier scale, sort of a Venn diagram with 3 rings that interlock. You have the ring of a film that you personally consider good. You have the ring of a film that is objectively great. And then you have the ring of a film that is historically important. A film could contain all 3 of those, or it could contain just one or just 2 of those factors.
Right.
I would put Sweetback's Badass Song for me in a ring of historical importance.
Which, it totally is. And but
it absolutely is. Now, it's not particularly that entertaining.
Right. But what I'm going to add, what I'm going to ask you on top of that is, now that we have the film Badass, there's no need to watch Sweetback.
I disagree. I think from a historical perspective, it's absolutely...
For an entertainment perspective, there's no reason to watch Sweetback's Badass Song unless you're like that.
It does have a hell of a soundtrack. I love that.
You could just pick up any Earth, Wind, and Fire record and get the same experience.
Yeah. It's also, one thing about the film is it's kind of ballsy because literally the entire plot of the film is Sweetback is like confronted by the man, and he spends the entire film escaping and occasionally murdering police officers until he crosses the border in Mexico. That's literally the entire film. So I gotta give it some props for that. While I won't say that I'll watch it again, it's got something going for it.
No, and that being said, we will watch The Room multiple times. In the future. Yes.
So what we've gotten from this conversation is The Room is greater than Sweetback's Badass Song.
Is this it for The Room? Like, can we maybe give another movie a chance to shine now?
Like Birdemic?
No, I think Greg Sestero might write another book. just explaining like, the aftermath of what happened.
Well, they're making that Best Friends Fiends movie, right?
Yeah, I'm surprised that actually hasn't come out yet. I think that's coming out next year, but it's been on like the back burner for like 2 years or something.
I heard an interview with Greg and Tommy today because I listened to the episode of how did this get made that kind of combined their old room review with some new interviews, and they according to Greg, it's slated for a 2018 release.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that they probably had it finished in like 2016, but they decided, hey, this movie, it's getting Oscar buzz. Let's just wait until more people know about us and our story and about Tommy Wiseau, and then we'll release it and get more money. Because I don't think it's going to make a lot of money either way, but I think if more people know about them, then it's going to make more money. So
I think if Tommy Wiseau's abortive TV series was any indication.
The Neighbors?
Oh, me and Zach totally watched that, and it was.
I watched the pilot and I couldn't get through the rest.
Yeah, no. If that was any indication, then I'm not looking forward to their next collaboration. I think the main thing is
Greg. Well, first of all, Greg Sestero was not involved in The Neighbors.
Yeah,
True.
And Greg wrote the script for Best Friends or Fiends or whatever it is, and Tommy he just acts in it, so he doesn't have any real creative control in it as far as I know.
The Disaster Artist, though, I think is an admirable way to put a cap on this best worst kind of movie.
I think
exactly this cultural phenomena. Yeah,
I think the true cap would be if the movie gets nominated for whatever, like even if it's just James Franco gets nominated for Best Actor, and
I don't think that should happen.
Well, I think you don't think James Franco should be nominated for Best Actor?
No, I don't think that anything in this movie should be nominated for an Oscar.
Ouch.
Okay. But anyway,
is that ouch? I'm not saying that you should.
I mean, I'm not saying you're right or wrong.
And you should never watch it. I'm just saying I don't think there was anything in this movie that was Oscar caliber.
Okay,
but
well,
again,
I think the nominations are too crowded for James Franco to get nominated.
I don't know. I'm hearing more and more that I heard that initially, but now people are trying to kind of saying, he actually has a decent chance. So I don't know. I at this point, it's December 12th or 13th. I'd say it's kind of up in the air at the moment because the whole Oscars are up in the air. After Moonlight broke the thing and like faked everyone out, like no one knows what's going to happen at the Oscars this year.
Warren Beatty said, "I ain't reading this shit."
Yeah, exactly. But I was just going to say, I mean, whether or not he deserves it, I think there's a decent chance that James Franco will be nominated, and if he is, I think he should bring Tommy Wiseau to the Oscars, and that would bring everything full circle. Because
no.
The whole reason
I agree with you.
I do want that to happen.
The Oscars.
Yeah, I do want that to happen.
Because according to Tommy, the whole reason he made The Room was to get Oscars and to be accepted into the system.
Well, that he paid to keep it in the movie theater so that it would qualify.
And the billboard,
Right, yeah.
And,
the billboard with the phone number on it.
Right. So I would say if that happens, then the story has completely come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'll buy that for sure. Now, as far as that, I think it is time, I hope to God, I know that he does most of the stuff himself. I mentioned this in our group chat yesterday, but I just want to see the next big thing be Neil Breen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want it so hard.
That's what I mean. When I said, are we done with The Room at this point? Like,
my only concern with Neil Breen getting famous is that, like, I think Tommy is well aware of what's happened. I think he's smarter than people think, or at least he's more self-aware than people think. But Neil Breen is just in his own ecosystem. He has no idea, I think, of what his influence is, or that the fact that he's making these terrible movies.
And I'm not sure he'll ever get it, which is because after the fact that he's made a couple of movies with it, with an eye for the cult circuit, and he keeps making them this way, and he keeps promising his next movie is going to be different, and it never is.
Right.
I kind of
that is the definition of an insane person.
And that's the thing. To me, Neil Breen is a schlock auteur. He's a director who he's got a style, and for better or worse, it is an established, dependable style.
So let's talk about Tommy Wiseau's cameo in the post credits, which, to be honest with you, I'm probably the only person that's going to say this. When I first saw him, I thought that it was Johnny Depp, for a split second. For a split second, because he had said like, "Oh, who do you want to play you in the movie, Tommy?" And his first answer was Johnny Depp.
Right.
So I thought maybe they got Johnny Depp to do this little cute fucking thing. No, it was Tommy Wiseau. So also like Johnny Depp's looking like shit these days. If I can compare those two,
you can say that, I think, because he's not a great person. So
literally and figuratively, yes.
Yeah. But it was cute, I guess. Clearly a scene that was supposed to be in the film that got cut because it served no purpose.
Right. It's just a fun teaser. I mean, it would have interrupted the flow of that scene if they kept it in. So rather than just delete it and leave it on the editing room floor, they knew that the fans would like it and that only really the fans would stick to the end. So just why not? Just stick at the end of the movie. I liked it. I loved his like completely fake mustache.
Oh yeah.
Like he like looked like Inspector Clouseau, like after like a 12-day bender, just like going nuts. It was cute. Like I think you said it was cute, and that's the perfect word for it. It's just fine.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move along to.
So that's the Disaster Artist.
Actually, I just want to say one last thing about Disaster. I meant to say this earlier. I think to your point, Bill. When we were talking about Badass and the Ed Wood, those are movies like Badass. Obviously, that was made by his son.
Yeah.
Ed Wood. Tim Burton like grew up on Ed Wood films. Like he never really considered him just a bad filmmaker. He actually liked his films.
Has he said that before? I've never heard that.
I've heard that somewhere. I could not for life me remember where, but
yeah, I believe it.
He said on record, like, I could not tell you a good script from a bad script, which from his filmography shows.
Yeah.
I think he just likes whatever he likes, and Ed Wood made the movies he likes, which are like 50s B movies. So,
and you know what? I'll even say that as far as Ed Wood, there's a definite Neil Breen comparison you could make in that I believe Ed Wood had a philosophy and a vision that all of his films try to convey about society. And Neil Breen films very much the same. There's a definite philosophical angle he's trying to communicate, and neither of them quite understand how to convey it. But it's clear that they want to.
That is a perfect summary. Yeah, because like you look at Ed Wood, and you look at the Ed Wood trilogy that is covered in the film, which would be Glen or Glenda, Bride of the Monster, Plan 9. It may be less with Plan 9, but there's all these elements in there that kind of reflect on him personally and his desire for acceptance. For
understanding of that which is different.
Which is portrayed so fucking brilliantly in that movie. I don't know. I stand by. It is a little unfair to compare Ed Wood to the Disaster Artist just because Ed Wood is such a perfectly executed film about this weird cult thing that, let's be honest, only a small portion of people that are going to see it care about.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Tim Burton's passion project.
Yeah.
It's a movie he made because he had enough clout and enough capabilities to be like, hey, I want to make this movie about Ed Wood. And they're like, whatever, you've made all hits so far, so let's do it. So,
Batman,
Ed Wood was not a hit, so hey.
After Batman,
that's fair.
Tim Burton could do no wrong at Warner Brothers until he did.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, with Badass and with movies are clearly from a specific like point in their childhood, like growing up and loving those people from like their whole lives, and just making this movie to dedicate to something they loved from childhood. And Disaster Artist, though, James Franco, like he first heard about The Room and Tommy Wiseau when he read the book during production on The Interview. Like he didn't really, he's like looking at Tommy Wiseau as like another art subject. He's seeing him as like, oh, okay, who is this guy? Like, and as he was making the film and got to connect to Tommy, he's like, oh, like I understand, like we are kind of kindred spirits in this way. Like I made all these weird exhibit movies that no one likes and no one understands.
He did like a Three's Company art gallery, wasn't that a thing?
I think, I don't know. I remember he made a mural of like the whole cast. This is the end, and it looked like really bad.
Oh no!
It was like to promote the movie, and everyone was like even like Jonah Hill was like, what is this? Like,
Do you even mural, bro?
Yeah. So I would say, like, from that standpoint, I think the only other people I could really see like connecting to Tommy in that way in Hollywood would be maybe Nicolas Cage and Shia LaBeouf.
I see where you're coming from that.
I think those are the only, besides James Franco, I think those are the only people that can really connect in that same way. And so, in that sense, I think that's the reason, in my opinion, that Badass and Ed Wood are great films, and this is just, in my opinion, a merely good one, or a pretty good one.
Maybe Tommy Wiseau as an actor is just borrowing from Nicolas Cage's own acting school. Do you know that Cage calls his style of acting nouveau shamanic?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I mean, I think Tommy Wiseau's influences are like Marlon Brando and
if you believe the film.
Like, I think those are, and James Dean are obviously, I think those are the people actually inspired him. But
and I'm not actually. If you Rotten Tomatoes did a 5 favorite films article in where Tommy Wiseau picked his 5 favorite, and James Dean was featured prominently in that list.
And that's something in the movie that kind of bummed me out, is that, like, in the book, it's very present that, like, they just knew, like, he like loved James Dean way before he met Greg.
Okay.
Like, that's just something they connected with. So, like, that whole scene where he's like introducing him to James Dean, like, I did not care for that.
Have you guys seen the episode of Tim and Eric Awesome Show where Tommy Wiseau is quote unquote guest director?
Yeah, what's it?
This isn't. I give this probably way more credit than it deserves. But that episode, like, it starts out looking like a Tim and Eric Awesome Show sketch, and then by the end of it, the set looks like the fucking room.
Right. Is it called the Pickle Man or something?
Pigman.
Pigman, that's it. Pigman.
Pigman, yeah. Oh my god, I love that so much, and just that little touch of like Tommy Wiseau takes over the production. It's great. Go watch that. Watch The Disaster Artist too, but Pigman is so funny.
Yeah.
Pigman.
I forgot
to get Jessica Alba to act in my movie.
Yeah.
It's not Jessica Alba. Yeah.
I forgot to mention this earlier. I actually spoke to Tommy once over the phone in college, and I asked him about Tim and Eric, and he was like kind of shitting on them, which I thought was really funny.
I remember hearing that he didn't really get along with him very well.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think they were in on the joke more than he was. Like, they were calling him in to do this, and like he took it way more seriously than they were, right?
I think that's the reason why I think he approved of this film 99%. Is that, like, I think ultimately he knew that he was not just laughing at him. He like knew that it was coming from a place of love and sincerity, even though there were a lot of jokes and it was a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But like Tim and Eric, they were just definitely laughing at him. And like I said, I think Tommy Wiseau is more self-aware than he makes himself seem. Like, I think at this point he's just a brand. He's an entrepreneur. He's just capitalizing on the
underwear with his name on it.
Right. I think he's just trying to make as much money off of this as possible at this point. But he's clearly a broken, like, heartbroken man that like knows that he'll never be who he actually wants to be, and like it's a pretty kind of tragic story.
Yeah.
Which is
as it kind of is with any filmmaker who just doesn't have it, who wants badly to be a great filmmaker but can't. It is. I mean, not just filmmaker, artist. I mean, there was that movie last year, Florence Foster Jenkins, Meryl Streep, which was about this sad woman who believed that with all her heart and was enabled by her family and friends into thinking that she was a great singer, and just was not at all in any way, shape, or form talented.
Was not.
Not. Yeah. And it's that thing, like the artist, the artists in everyone, wants to be good, and some people just don't have it. But in the case of Tommy, he lucked out to an extent, because as sad as it is that he'll never be who he wants to be, he is something fascinating nonetheless.
In true Hollywood fashion, he failed upward.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Anyway, how's your sex life?
Right.
And speaking of sex life,
that's a good segue.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, so Bill A., you're the one who introduced us to anti-porno. Please tell us about it.
Well, I heard about anti-porno several months ago. I'm a big fan of the director, Sion Sono, although it might be Sono Sion. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with the cultural ways of saying a person's name front ways or back ways. But for the sake of this, just Sion Sono. I've been a fan of his since Why Don't You Play in Hell and Tokyo Tribe. These two movies that he did, one of which was about his love of 35 millimeter filmmaking, and the other that was like a manga adaptation, which was told in complete rap verse. Very interesting movie, and a very awesome filmmaker. He's very vivid and dynamic. He very much bucks the system whenever he can. He did a movie like maybe a decade ago called Love Exposure. That was this like epic long, like 3.5 hour, maybe 4 hour even, tale about a young man who takes upskirt photos of women. And that's the movie. I mean, the movie is about other things. It involves a cult. It involves Christianity. It involves, morals and
I'm just going to stop you for a brief moment because for the movie Why Don't You Play in Hell, which I'd heard the title, but I knew nothing about the movie. I'm just going to read the first sentence of the plot description on Wikipedia.
Sure.
There's a war going on, but that won't stop the inexperienced but eager wannabe film crew, the fuck bombers, from following their dreams of making the ultimate action epic.
And Alamo Drafthouse even helped distribute it in America. Why Don't You Play in Hell? And they have T-shirts that say "fuck bombers." I
am immediately interested.
It's a great movie. It really is. The love of filmmaking, and also it's a funny tale about the Japanese mafia, how they want to make movies as well, and how these young kids kind of end up getting in over their heads with them, and how they mix in karate movies and stuff. It's really, really wonderful film. It was one of the best films of that year that I saw it. But so when I heard about anti-porno, it was earlier this year. He's a very prolific filmmaker, Sion Sono. He does multiple films a year. He releases like 2, 3, 4 at a time. I mean, he's almost like a James Franco type, except he's much older. But he's been doing films since like the 80s. But anti-porno, I discussed it with you guys a little bit before the broadcast, that it's kind of taking place within this new movement in Japanese filmmaking, where this one studio wants to reproduce old-fashioned softcore porn movies, or their version of softcore porn, anyways. And one movie that Mubi.com released on their website follows this movement is called A Woman in the Wind. And to continue in their series, they decided to select anti-porno, which is Sion Sono's contribution to that movement. And in classic Sion Sono fashion, it is a complete criticism and rebuke of that very movement. The movie is essentially about an actress or an amateurish actress who has been selected to be in this movie. And it's essentially her trip into madness and self.
But it starts out very differently from that.
But it starts out extremely differently from that. It starts off as within that movie she's filming. That's kind of like, I know that's almost giving away a twist, but the movie takes so many twists, it's hard to spoil anything.
Yeah, I think the first twist, which happens at pretty much the half-hour mark, you can't explain this movie without going into it.
Without going into that.
So why don't we go ahead and get into that then?
Yes, she's playing the character of this artist/author in Japan who starts off her morning basically in self-loathing mode, so to speak. She is breaking glass. She's talking to herself. She's seeing her sister who died apparently, and we're seeing all these different things happening around her that don't seem to be taking place in time and space, but are probably just within her own mind. And then her assistant comes in, who's a little older than her, and she kind of mocks her and degrades her to horrific levels even. And it eventually reaches this crescendo where the camera pulls back and we see that it's a film production the entire time, that it's not just this crazy woman. It's actually a story that they're trying to film. And that's where the movie really starts right there. So I want to know, after I saw this movie, I've talked about this many times in the broadcast in past episodes, that I have a difficult time rating movies. I like to think that I can back up my ratings very well, but when it comes to the actual star rating, I tend to like movies more than I dislike them. Mm-hmm. I have a heart, specifically Justice League. I started out with a 5-star rating, and I eventually moved it down to 1.5, and then I settled on 2. So I can drastically change my opinions within days, And sometimes a movie ages poorly, extremely poorly, and sometimes it just settles for you. So maybe I just need to kind of relax more and just let things settle a bit. But when it comes to anti-porno, I knew what I was watching was something I really enjoyed. I knew, stylistically it was excellent. The photography was excellent. The color palette was superb. The acting was insane. The writing was insane. Mm-hmm. The set design was incredible, almost Kubrick level in a way. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Kubrick and how vivid and almost like how it was like a puzzle of a set, of a set design. And so after I watched it, Mubi.com offered me to send the movie to a couple different email addresses. And so the first ones I thought of were Ken, Hawk, and our editor, Zach Jeremiah. And so I immediately sent it to y'all, and you guys just recently watched the movie, and I want to know your thoughts.
So I got strong Pee-wee's Playhouse vibes in the first 20 minutes.
Despite the dark tone, it was very much Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Well, the first half hour of the movie takes place in a static set, but now when I say static set, that's very loose because it is one of the most colorful and strange sets that you've ever seen.
Yeah, the camera's constantly moving. It's not like it's static. It's just static in terms of location.
Oddly enough,
Hawk Ripjaw hit me up on Facebook the other day and said, Pee-wee Playhouse is fucking madness.
Yeah, because I just realized for a while the show was not on Netflix, and I only just realized a couple days ago that it was. So I decided to watch it, and watching it now as an adult in a different context, it's very nightmarish. Like I can't imagine why I would have enjoyed that as a child.
I loved it as a kid, and I love it now. But continue with your porno talk.
This is not a wow. All right, this is not a porno. This is in no way.
This is the film that Paul Rubens got arrested. No, I'm kidding.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he potentially could get arrested watching this film, but
maybe I don't know.
Well, actually, no. To be honest, while there is certainly nudity in this film, which pornography is certainly a major theme within it, this is not a sexy film in any way. This is a film that it very much based on its title. It's very much anti. Exploitation sexually. The primary theme of it is basically to satirize the themes that you get in a very specifically Japanese porno.
Yeah. Oh, no. The nudity feels like something you're not supposed to be looking at.
Right, and because it satirizes those themes, it has to, of course, address them, but it does it in the most unsexy way possible. And what's interesting about this is it's sort of like okay. So a comparison I would make is if you've ever seen Michael Haneke's Funny Games.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Both
Either version, the original, I believe it was in German first, and then there's the English language version. Both are essentially the same film. A major theme in that is basically a criticism of violence in cinema and those who enjoy watching violent films, and it accomplishes the satirization of that by being one of the most goddamn violent things you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a sense of hypocrisy to it that is palpable, but at the same time, you get the sense that that's sort of the point, is that yes, a lot of these themes are reprehensible, but it's also human nature to want to desire to an extent these things which are essentially pretty awful. Am I making? Am I making?
Yeah. No, you're making
a dead silence.
Well, I think we were just absorbing what you had just said, because it was pretty powerful and insightful, I thought. Anti-porno, yeah, it very much is a criticism in that light. Although I wouldn't say it's hypocritical.
And that's the thing. I don't mean
that might be the only difference.
I don't mean to say hypocritical in terms of in necessarily a negative light.
Yeah. It throws up the mirror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It shows. It throws. Good. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hawk, what did you think of the movie?
Well, because going off that same idea is that porn is something that people watch because it's like, yeah, it's fucking hot, and I'm gonna jerk off.
Okay.
But anti-porno,
that's the best description of why people watch porno I've ever heard in my life.
Either that or I'm bored and nobody's home right now. It's a lot of people have been talking about how the movie takes a very feminist view on porn, in the fact that it kind of changes the dynamic in terms of what the man would like to see in porno versus what the woman probably is feeling in a porno as the victim. But even porn that focuses on the victim is still sexualized in a way because there's a certain audience that wants to have that feeling of being the victim in the situation, whereas a lot of almost all of anti-porno is just hateful and really kind of shows off what the victim in that real situation could be feeling, and as an extension, how the most women in the industry are probably treated by the male creators in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the fact that they reversed the roles of that was the best part. Is the way that the roles and the dynamics and the power keeps changing hands was so clever, and the movie really never stops being surprising because of that.
And what's fascinating is this movie comes in at 75 minutes. It is a quick movie, and it accomplishes so much in that time.
Oh yeah, yes. No, for sure. It just keeps going and going. It never. I mean, it stops at a certain point, but that's the ending. That's where it reaches its peak right there. And that's when I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's kind of like the critical representation of an orgasm that happens at the very tippy-toe ending of the film, when just this explosion of multicolored paint just blows from the roof or the ceiling of the set they're in, and just covers everything in it. And
like Home Alone 2?
Yes, exactly like Home Alone 2. That's wow. Yes, just like Home Alone 2. No, it's very unsettling, while at the same time you get exactly what it's trying to convey. And even though there's a hint of pleasure being expressed in that particular sequence, there's also a lot of pain being expressed too.
It's almost resigning.
Yeah.
And that's where I come to when I was talking about, like, I maybe I used the wrong term when I said hypocritical necessarily, but this thing of resigning yourself to the fact.
I feel like, well, your comment about being hypocritical, I think you were applying more to funny games than this.
Yeah, I guess. But what I'm saying though is, I think the kind of one of the ultimate resolutions that he has into this exploration. He's explanation of is the fact that it is. In many ways, it's reprehensible and it's exploitive, but that's why people like it, and it's messed up, but it's also kind of an essential fact of society and humanity, which is kind of fucked up, and it's profound that to point that out in the way that he does.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you guys have been saying reminds me of what you guys were also saying about the Neon Demon, which I haven't seen either of these films.
I think you should see the Neon Demon. It's on Amazon Prime right now.
It's not a bad comparison, actually, Bill.
It really isn't. And I just rewatched the Neon Demon a couple weeks ago, and I saw different things in that movie than I remembered when I initially saw it in the theater.
Have you figured out what the hell the eye thing's all about?
Well, I have my own ideas on that, but I did figure out that scene where Jenna Malone is peeing. Okay. It's not pee. It is in fact blood.
Yeah, that's blood.
Yeah, I looked. I took a closer look at it and I paused it. And I was like, "That's red." I was like, what's the deal with that? Okay. So the movie, of course, that movie is vibrantly colored in different ways and similar ways as to anti-porno, but they're both getting at something, and especially post-Weinstein, the Neon Demon is very relevant, I think, in terms of about toxic Hollywood and
exploitation.
This exploitation of youth and this hunger for the next big thing and this desire for the taboo and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of disgusting. It's supposed to be disgusting, but it's while at the same time you're watching this young woman, or this girl really, rise up the ranks just by being young, and it's cruel to watch. But it's a better movie than I think people give it credit for. I think a lot of people think it's up its own ass, and maybe it is in a way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie. It just means maybe the director has a pretension about himself, which I think he does. But Sion Sono, I don't think you could say that about him or his work particularly. I think he has I don't want to say his style is humble, but I do think it's purposeful beyond just showing off.
So what you're saying, Bill, is that his films are stylistically designed to be that way.
But we can, yeah, right, okay.
We can diminish the effects of it.
We can diminish the effects of it, exactly.
Oh, wow.
That's a Red Letter Media reference right there.
Wow.
Yeah, I try to avoid those, but I just couldn't help myself.
That's okay. That's fine. And didn't they just recently do a review of The Disaster Artist where they mentioned that they videotaped Tommy Wiseau saying, "You're tearing me apart, George"?
Which, well, first off, I've watched that video of theirs multiple times because I love to show people that Tommy Wiseau apparently claims to know George Lucas, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Well, he says he knows a George, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
he's like, George Lucas, I know the guy. Those are his exact words.
He knows a Senor George Lucas. He doesn't know the George Lucas.
Okay.
No,
I think he meant
Senor George.
I think he meant I know of George Lucas, and therefore I don't want to blow my chance of working with him, because he said recently that he wants to work in a Star Wars movie.
I would love to see him in a Star Wars movie.
And truth be told, that would be a pretty good fit. Like, just like a side character in Star Wars, he could totally do it.
What would Tommy Wiseau's Star Wars name be?
Just Tommy Wiseau.
Hey, hi, buddy. He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
I don't know, like, because there are so many cameos that first movie, The Force Awakens, because I was just rewatching that before The Last Jedi, and I'd forgotten that the raid guys were in it. like for that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was.
Which is
cool.
weird because they don't do like any martial arts or anything. They just talk, and then they
just
Ben
talk
Schwartz is
and they talk and run away from a monster.
Right? Yeah, it's really weird. Like I don't know why they got picked for that part.
Really,
but
that was disappointing because when I first heard that they would be cameoing, I was like, "Oh, there's going to be a fucking awesome scene where they get to integrate martial arts with lightsabers." It's like, no, they just get eaten by a space monster and that's it.
Well,
Yeah,
exactly. we can't be handing out lightsabers like candy.
And they tried to do the
watch the
integrating martial arts with lightsabers thing. It was called the Phantom Menace, and no one liked it.
Now, Donnie Yen
no.
was in Rogue One, and he got to do some stuff against some stormtroopers. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Double-sided lightsaber in Phantom Menace is dumb, but it wasn't the overkill that was Attack of the Clones. And
I was gonna say, I'm talking more Attack of the Clones, where just like everyone's just running around with lightsabers and just doing whatever.
Oprah might as well have been there. You get a lightsaber. You get a lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so I think we've pretty much covered anti-porno. So let's move on to probably the most controversial conversation of the night, which is Columbus.
It was an anti-porno? Well, I guess we were all collectively, the three of us that saw it were
you guys
on board
liked
with it.
it.
So.
I don't know if I will watch this film, but we'll see.
It's certainly a divisive one. Columbus is also divisive, but apparently I'm the only one who found it. So
I think I should play moderator here for you two to come to some sort of agreement.
I'm gonna give Hawk the floor. Please explain to me why you enjoy Columbus.
Yes.
All right. So Columbus, for some background, basically it has John Cho. His character is kind of stuck in the town of Columbus after his dad, who's an architect, collapses in between talks on architecture at the local college.
I thought this movie was about Christopher Columbus. That's legit what I thought this was about.
No. And then Haley Lou Richardson plays a character named Casey. She is also sort of stuck in this town as well. She's caring after her mother, who's a recovering drug addict. The two of them come together, and she starts to show him some of the architecture of the town. She's very passionate about it, and she definitely has the potential to move, kind of let her life blossom a little bit more. But she's more content with just staying in the town and enjoying the architecture and taking care of her mother. Whereas John Cho's character, Jin, he wants to get the hell out of there. He never got along with his dad. His dad never really showed any love for him. He doesn't want to be there. So these two characters are kind of drawn together by what she can show him for her love for the architecture and with his kind of affection for her. Now, it's worth noting that Haley Lou Richardson is, I think, 18, 19 or something like that. John Cho is in his early 40s. So the dynamic is established with these characters that isn't necessarily sexual, but it's affectionate. They have a friendship. There might be something more, but there's never really any of that, romantic drama that would lead to a big falling out. Then they have sex at one point, and then they goes that route. The movie doesn't have that. Doesn't go that direction in terms of a romance.
So it's not Garden State.
It's not Garden State.
It's not Garden State.
It's more lost in translation.
You're right.
I'd say it's partly lost in translation. Now, Ken, I'm going to preemptively kind of counteract one of the things that you said about the movie. One of your biggest criticisms is that it's just people talking about how architecture makes them feel.
Yeah,
And I will
that's
cite
exactly what it was.
I will cite one specific scene and then a couple others in terms of why I don't think it's just that. There's a scene where Jin and Casey are looking at a bank, and she's just like listing off these facts. Oh, this bank was this, and it was, back in the day, these banks were brick and mortar. They were built like a fortress, and the fact that this bank had glass walls was a really revolutionary thing because banks were not like that. And Jin says, "Turn off your tour guide mode for a second, to stop being a tour guide and tell me how this building makes you feel." And so she does, and at that point, Casey's audio track actually gets muted, and you don't get to hear specifically what she feels about the building. And I thought that was a very effective scene because it's not really important how she felt about the building. It's more important that she just got challenged to explore the fact that she felt something about it. And I think that's like the whole thing about this movie is these characters being able to grow in ways they weren't really prepared or willing to do. And towards the end of the movie, each character is trying to let the other one come to their side of reasoning. Jin wants Casey to blossom outside of the town and become a better person of herself. And Casey wants Jin to stay where he is and take care of his father because that's his dad. And there's so much that he can learn to love when he's there in that town. So I think on that thematic level, a lot of those character movements were really profound to me. And like seeing somebody passionate about something is one of the coolest things I can ever see. You know, when you see somebody who wants to explore something so specific and random and something innocuous that nobody else wants to know anything about, but seeing this one person has so much love for it, I think is the best feeling for that person, and it makes me feel good to see them be so passionate about it.
Did you see Brigsby Bear?
I started it, but I didn't get to see much of it. I started it and then I had to run off and do something else. But that is on my list to see before the end of the year.
Nice. That's probably my favorite movie of the year, and for many of the reasons you just said. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Columbus actually, it's in my top 3 for the year. Like it's kind of tussling with Blade Runner 2049 and Lemon at the moment.
You got to. Where's Silvio? Where's Silvio?
Silvio's number 4 right now.
Hey,
good. That's my favorite number.
But Columbus is this year's Patterson for me.
Okay.
And you know what? There's certainly. I would actually, when you say Patterson, I can see the comparisons you're making. What I'm going to go ahead and say is, whereas Patterson showed this love for the city, for the city of Patterson, this love for living the simple life that he lived there, and going about his life. This movie, to me, felt like the rote version of that. You have this character who is from the outside, that John Cho plays, who is there because he has to be, because his father is dying. And Cho's character is probably the more interesting one in the film. I can't say for sure that I had necessarily any problems with it, but Casey, the Haley Lou Richardson's character, to me is a textbook example of the
Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Thank you. That's where I was going.
Copyright Nathan Raymond.
Yeah.
where she is this, she's this dreamer character who has this incredible love and passion for this one subject, and she's got her quirks, and she's got her friend who listens to her talk about her quirks, but you know what? She can't leave home because she's got this thing that's holding her back, and god damn it, John Cho is gonna teach her that she needs to let go of that. And while he does that, she's gonna teach him a little something about loving your father. It's such a cliched fucking movie that thinks it's not. And
but I would disagree. That isn't part of the trope of the manic pixie dream girl is this kind of colorful, vapid female character that the main guy wants to get because she's kind of very, very quirky in a very sexy way, but then it turns out to be a very shallow thing.
I think it's a variable definition. Like, I mean, yes, you're right, but it doesn't necessarily apply to that.
I think it was fairly surface level in her case. The exploration of the depth of her character. I understand what you're saying about the scene where, and I thought it was a good directorial choice to not actually hear her describe the architecture. That I will grant you that. But I don't get anything beyond that in terms of what her passion is and what and why she's staying. The only thing she says is she's staying because her mother was doing, was staying off drugs because she was there. You don't get a sense of her relationship with her mother outside of that. The scenes you have with them, first of all, there's no dialogue, and what is unspoken doesn't feel real to me. This is a film with a lot of fucking silence. And that's okay if you actually feel like the actor is conveying something with that silence. I didn't buy her performance. I didn't buy the background that her characters presented, and so that's why I didn't buy this movie.
Would this have been more entertaining if we filled in that silence with The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel?
I don't know how that would change it. No.
It would make it graduate, right?
Which version? The version with overdubs or without? So anyway,
is this a foreign film?
No, I don't think so. Oh. No.
Well, the director is a if I'm not mistaken, he is Korean, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think so. His name is Kogonada.
Yeah, but either way, I just found this movie to be much less deep than it seems to think it is, and now I mean you seem to have gotten a lot of it out of it. I'm not going to take that away from you because
has anybody ever seen Two Stupid Dogs? I feel like what Ken is doing right now is ain't that cute, but you're wrong. That's a Two Stupid Dogs reference for you there. That's some old school.
90s Nickelodeon references. Jeez,
it was TBS, but yeah,
it was TBS.
Wow. Okay.
This was a Ted Turner joint. Get it right.
It's not a Bill Leon reference if it's not a 90s cartoon reference.
Maybe.
Bill A, did you see Columbus?
No, I didn't get to see it in time for the broadcast.
Okay, but you still have it available?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, do you see it soon? Because to
me, that's all I'll say.
No, that's fine.
If it spoke to you, cool.
Yeah, and I think that some of the this is why I've seen it a few times now. Is that I feel like there's a little bit more to unpack with it in terms of passion and being stuck in one place. It's a very melancholy film, and I think part of the reason that there's not a lot of dialogue when Casey and her mother have scenes together is because there's not really any reason for her to be there with her mother. That is a relationship that is not going to be mended in the way that she wants it to be.
I just want to say this movie, the way it opens, confused the friggin' hell out of me. I had to rewind it a couple times because I didn't get what was going on, and then finally, like it's one of those things where I hate when a movie does this, where it starts off with something that's not explained, and then it proceeds to give you, in retrospect, the reason for that happening. Even some movies I enjoy do this, and it never ceases to annoy me. I don't like a movie that does. This movie opens with this elderly Korean man being led around on a tour, and clearly he's not listening to anyone, to this tour guide who's giving him these facts, and then at one point he just randomly walks off camera, and then the tour guide looks off camera and starts running very quickly, and then cut to John Cho, and it took me another 15 minutes before I got that was supposed to be John Cho's father.
It's an artificial way to create mystery. I made the same complaint about Justice League with the mother box setup.
It's a little different from that, but you're not not wrong. I will give you that it's kind of ambiguous in a way that I don't think he really intended. I think it sets up what's going on, but it's
just show a dude lying on the ground. That's enough.
Well, they did show him lying on the ground.
I rewound it twice. I didn't see anyone lying there.
Yeah, it cuts to a very, very wide shot of the university, and he's laying on the ground around the middle of the screen, and Parker Posey is sprinting towards him.
I did not see that. I mean, you said the middle of the screen because I was looking and I couldn't find it.
Middle left, I guess. It is there. It's actually the shot's even in the trailer.
Is it like a really fast shot or something? Because
a shot lasts about 4 seconds.
Okay, well somehow I missed it, and I was trying my best to pay attention. But
Speaking of shots, though, the cinematography in this movie is I found it to be absolutely breathtaking with some of the choices Kogonada made. because the environments and the architecture and the rooms in this movie feel just as living and breathing as the characters do. There's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is Jin and then Parker Pose's character in a hotel room, and you see her kind of on the left side of the frame, and she's talking to him, whereas you can only see him reflected in the mirror sitting on top of the dresser. And then, she's talking to him, then she moves over and sits next to him, and it's just the two of them in probably maybe a 16th of the screen's real estate talking to each other, whereas you can kind of see the rest of the room just there, and the build of the room, the way it's put together, and the way it's what's the word? The things are arranged in there, the way it's staged is just as much of importance as the characters themselves. There are shots where you see a room as an establishing shot before a character happens to wander into the room. There's a scene where Casey has a conversation with a character standing off screen in a hallway where you can't see her. And I think the fact that the film gives equal attention to the characters and to the rooms also kind of solidifies the fact that the way that the architecture is and how it breathes is very important.
Maybe that's another thing that I couldn't get into is I sincerely couldn't give a shit about architecture.
And that's fair, because I actually am huge on architecture, especially interior design. And not that I'd ever want to do it, but whenever I drive past a house and at night and the lights are on and you can the blinds are drawn, you can kind of see inside with you can see some light fixtures or maybe a doorway. And I think the way that buildings are put together and the rooms are connected and the way things are arranged inside those rooms and how it builds a complete structure is really, really interesting. It's almost an ASMR thing. That's why I love Dead Malls so much. Like we've talked about Dead Malls before, you and I, and you're more into the urban exploration in terms of abandoned malls that may be in somewhat of a decrepit state. I'm more into seeing a mall in a state of disarray where some of the storefronts are closed, but you can still see what they were doing with the architecture and what the architect was going for in terms of theme and culture. And I think all those things can be really interesting in terms of not only what they mean, but what people feel about them, which is probably a huge part of why Columbus spoke so much to me, but also because in the movie, these characters feel so passionately about something is really what drove it home for me, I think.
All right, fair enough. And I'll just summarize on my own, saying that to me, Columbus was a little too much mumble in my core.
Sure, yeah.
That's what I'll say.
Art Vandalay. I'm an architect.
So we'll go ahead and move on because we
had to go there.
We really are running long in this episode already.
We'll be all right. So let's talk about Gilbert, right? That's what's up next.
Yes.
I want to kick this off and say,
yeah, go ahead.
For me, this was a very interesting watch. I saw The Disaster Artist on Monday, and I saw Gilbert on Tuesday. And seeing these two films back to back, to me, I'm not going to compare them directly. Obviously, one is a documentary, and one is a staged fictionalization based on a book not by Tommy Wiseau. But Tommy Wiseau and Gilbert Gottfried are sort of these oddities of pop culture. People know who they are. They have reputations of being strange people. In the case of Gilbert Gottfried, I think maybe his vulgarity has kind of become his identity over the past 15 years.
And his screaming voice, of course.
Well, yeah, that was always. I'm talking about like once he started doing the roasts, people associated like, oh, Gilbert Gottfried's about to get really vulgar.
It's weird because he also has that vulgarity, but he does have like that Disney side where he's also like in Aladdin and like all these kid movies. So it's weird that he has like this recognition for all these kid films.
Oh yeah. They bring that up in the movie. They talk about because Affleck fired him for making jokes about the tsunami.
Right.
And they had, in the movie, I think they asked him, they're like, oh, has Disney ever said anything about like the vulgar stuff that you do? Because he'll come in and do Iago for Kingdom Hearts games or whatever, you know, he'll
did you see that documentary Life Animated?
Yes.
I haven't. Is he in that?
He pops up. He just comes in as like Iago essentially, but it's just weird. Like he just is completely G-rated, and it's actually a sweet moment.
Right. I'm going to be honest with you. When I heard about Life Animated, which was last year when it was nominated for Best Documentary, I watched the trailer, and I love Disney films. I love Aladdin. I love the Disney Renaissance. I love animation. I was like, this is really schmaltzy, and I don't,
I would say the movie is a lot better than the trailer.
Okay.
It overcomes the schmaltz in the concept because, yes,
that's good.
It's very easy to dismiss the concept as, this flighty thing, but the truth is it really hits the emotional heart of the complete change in like game-changing move that it was, that these parents discovered that their son would respond. This son they've never been able to communicate clearly to, or at least not since he started displaying, autistic traits. They finally find a way to communicate to him through a friggin' Iago puppet. And this kid grows up and is like this huge fan of Disney, and Gilbert Gottfried in particular, like as Iago, and it's a beautiful little movie. And this film, on the other hand, much like Life Animated, where Life Animated, in the very brief moments where Godfrey appears, it shows him in very much a G-rated sense. Gilbert shows kind of all aspects of his personality, including something that I am just floored. I would never have expected that he has a very normal family life. He has kids, and these kids treat him like a dad. And
I want to say there was a point watching Gilbert that I thought to myself, I was like, I wish Gilbert Gottfried was my dad, which says things about my relationship with my dad that I'm not going to get into. But he comes off as he's such a sweet guy, and it kind of makes it frustrating when he's distant with his wife on camera a little bit. Not to where I was angry, because I get it and I understand that this can't be easy for him
being interviewed. Yeah,
but you definitely sense this distance with his wife when he's on camera in the film.
Well, I would say it's when he's on camera being interviewed with her next to him. That's when he seems uncomfortable. When you see the scenes that clearly they shot of him interacting with her naturally, it's clear that they have a definite and deep love and affection for each other.
Absolutely. There's a great scene in this movie where she pulls out like old cards that he gave her, and he signs all of them. Go fuck yourself.
Yes. Which is, it's like, and she laughs so hard at it because she knows Gilbert, and she knows that to him that is like a sign of affection. It's not unlike like the Don Rickles thing, where being insulted by him, no matter how vicious, it was considered a compliment. And
yeah. No, just I was reminiscing because I don't know if you guys have read Norm Macdonald's book from last year.
No,
I didn't.
Norm Macdonald, it's called Based on a True Story, and they kind of did a disservice to it because they sold it as an autobiography, but it's actually a novel where he is like basically somewhat parroting like The Grapes of Wrath and like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and he's basically making a parody of celebrity autobiographies where everything is so like exaggerated over the top.
Yeah.
But there's like a sincerity to it. But he exaggerates the first time he met Don Rickles. I think on the set of Dirty Work.
Is he in Dirty Work?
Is he? I hope I'm not mixing him up with somebody else.
No, he's like the theater manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he in his book like plays him like completely straight, or Norm Macdonald plays himself completely straight, like acting like, oh, like he's this great comedian. He like starts making fun of him. He like, where is this coming from? Like all this stuff, like where he acts like he's like insulted by like all this stuff, and it's like, I never expected Don Rickles to insult me in this way. It's pretty funny how he plays it out, but
that kind of makes me think of when Bruce Campbell he has his normal autobiography, If Chins Could Kill, but then he has his pseudo biography / narrative comedy, Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way.
Oh yeah.
And you sort of made me think about that because it's sort of a mock biography.
Right, I could see that. I haven't read either of those, but I've heard good things about both of them.
I highly recommend the audiobook version of Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way because it's turned into this like kind of audio play.
Okay.
Brings in a lot of actor friends to play it out, and it's a great listen.
Nice.
Anyway, so Gilbert, what's this documentary? By the way, for those who may have seen Harmontown, the documentary about Dan Harmon.
Yeah, it's good.
Same director, Neil Berkeley.
Okay.
And so it has that same kind of feel where you really get a sense of who Gilbert is, in person. And it doesn't deal near as much with his career as a lot of biographical documentaries might. And I think that's to the film's credit. Really what it focuses on is how events in his life affected his family life.
Yes.
And it's great because that's an area that you don't know about. If you want to know about Gilbert Gottfried as a famous person and like talking pop culture, listen to his podcast because there's no end to his pop culture knowledge and interest in that.
Yes, and also Gilbert is the first person in the room to make a problem child reference. Always
to make fun of, and not just that, but God, how many shitty movies has he been in?
A lot. There's that the Mad Magazine one he was in, right?
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, you just reminded me of that.
Whatever the fuck that's called.
And then how about Funky Monkey?
I've never seen that. I don't know what that is, but I have heard him bring it up on the show. So that's kind of the thing here is Ken would talk about Gilbert's podcast. And I was like, the guy that does Iago? And then Tom Sharpling was on, and I listened to that, and I just fucking, like, from that point on, I was listening to Gilbert's podcast. Like, I was hooked. I love it.
If you're a fan of film at all, Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast is I'm going to go ahead and plug it for him just because
it's a way better podcast than it may have any right being, at least based on what you know of Gilbert Gottfried as a pop culture icon on the surface.
Well, the main thing is it's the whole focus of the podcast is getting actors, writers, producers, directors, people in show business from yesteryear. Like,
yeah, they're really into old Hollywood.
A lot of old Hollywood people in their 80s, 90s. And they have younger people from time to time, but and getting them to tell stories and keep these stories alive, because there are some fascinating stories of old Hollywood that just will. Let me just say,
I'm going to set you up for this. Are you ready?
All right, go ahead.
Tell the Frankie Avalon strip club story.
Oh gosh, you know what? I'll let you tell that one because I know it, but I don't know that one by heart very.
They're talking to Frankie Avalon about Cesar Romero, who, if you don't know, played the Joker on the Adam West Batman show. And they're talking about this rumor that he was gay and he had these boy toys hanging around in his trailer, and that he would play a game with them where he dropped his pants and would have them try to fling orange wedges at his ass.
And by the way, Gilbert tells this story anytime Cesar Romero is referenced.
Yes,
on the podcast, and it's basically
there's the checklist. There's the checklist. You got the Cesar Romero orange wedges. You got Milton Berle's got a big dick. You've got Walt Disney's an anti-Semite. You know, he loves those go-to references to old Hollywood that are like, again, right in line with his vulgarity. But the Frankie Avalon story, Frankie Avalon is like, he's like, I've never heard that story, but one time me, Cesar Romero, and Arnold Stang went to a strip club together.
And that alone, if you can't picture Arnold Stang, he's that actor.
Arnold Stang was like the Reebok version of Don Knotts. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is.
Now, a question I have about the documentary and the podcast is that does Gilbert Gottfried just do his voice during both of them, or is he ever like out of voice?
They address this in the film.
Okay.
His regular speaking voice is a little more subdued. It's a little quieter. When he gets excited, he turns into
He turns like Gottfried.
And that's not an act. That is his voice.
No. Yeah. I'm just guessing that because I think Howard Stern actually like posted like him just talking like
that I could be wrong, but I think that Howard Stern thing is fake.
Is it? I saw it on YouTube and I never really knew the full details of it.
If you see early Gilbert Gottfried like footage, like there's some footage of him on the set of Saturday Night Live, for instance, when he's not performing, and his voice is certainly more subdued, but it's still there. It's one of those things where it's just as a performer, he projects, and when he's in projection mode, it happens to be that shout, and. It's not unlike, say, Bobcat Goldthwait, where Bobcat Goldthwait has his crazy guy performance voice, and when you hear his normal speaking voice, you can tell that it's really just a matter of him raising his pitch and speaking a little bit less coherently.
Right.
And he gets into that, and it's actually, speaking of old Hollywood, a very old Hollywood thing to do as a comedian, to have your gimmick that you provide on stage.
Yeah, that was just something I was curious about with the documentary and the podcast, is how far he goes into his normal voice as opposed to his actual like character voice. Or
with Gilbert, and I believe the documentary never outright states it, but it's addressed like it's not really that much of a character. Like it is kind of him.
Right.
I use character loosely, to be fair.
Right. I understand where you're coming from.
It's an exaggerated version of himself. So, needless to say, the documentary deals with his family life, and the podcast, which of course we've plugged, sort of deals with his interest in Hollywood and pop culture. Both are it kind of if you watch one and listen to the other, it creates this fully fledged picture of who he is as an individual. And so as a fan of his podcast, that's kind of why I really recommend it. But the film, though, it's a solid documentary, and it has some very interesting people speak on his behalf. For instance, you hear a few comments from Eddie Murphy praising Gilbert as like one of his favorite comics.
Now that's archive footage. They did not interview Eddie Murphy for this film, but goddamn Joe Piscopo, out of nowhere, where the fuck has he been?
Working out, apparently.
I guess, but to see him on the screen, and then I was like, "Is that Joe Piscopo?" And then at the bottom of the screen, Joe Piscopo. I was like, I don't even remember the last time I've seen him.
Right. Well, Gilbert makes a bit. Whenever Joe Piscopo is mentioned, he mentions that Piscopo is the member of the new Saturday Night Live cast who they kept in the year that Gilbert was on. And
when he got fired,
and everyone else was fired from the cast. They kept Piscopo, and so there's always been that little, a little bit of competition because of that.
So, in terms of this documentary, what you're not going to get is a summary or a retelling of Gilbert's career.
You'll get little pieces,
little bits of that, but really what this is who is Gilbert Gottfried as a person, and that is the film. Well, that is what I wanted out of The Disaster Artist. And again, like, it's this weird, eccentric Hollywood guy. I mean, obviously Gilbert's more famous than Tommy Wiseau is, but at this point, like, after all the traction that The Room has built up and shit, people know who he is. It's unfair for me to even bring it up, but it was just interesting for me to watch them one after the other, because I just really felt like...
I kind of see your comparison that you're doing there, and I can understand it. What I will say is that, I think we should summarize by saying, Gilbert is certainly worth watching. It's on VOD right now. Check it out. And it compares very favorably to other. There's been a lot of stand-up comedian profile documentaries lately. I would put this in the highest tier of that.
Yes. If I had to make one complaint, this is completely nitpicky. I do not consider this a slight against the movie. I wish we got more Frank Santopadre, because One of the reasons I love the podcast is because Frank, if he needs to, he can bring Gilbert back down to earth.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It would have been nice to see a little bit of a little bit more on the podcast, kind of because that's become kind of a third career for him, and so yeah, I can understand that. It doesn't hurt the film, but I think it would have added another layer to the movie.
And apparently Weird Al got cut out of this because his name's in the credits. And I said to Ken, I was like, where was Weird Al in the movie? He was like, I don't think he was in it.
He was not. So, but, that happens in documentaries.
Yeah, it happens. But amazing, colossal podcast. The film Gilbert Gottfried deserves to be celebrated because he, in his own way, is a charismatic kind of genius. that is not something I expected to say today.
I would use the phrase misunderstood genius. There's lots of people who just can't stand him, and
well, that's the thing is I will walk around my house with these headphones on listening to his podcast, and like a relative will be like, what are you listening to? I'll be like, oh, I'm listening to Gilbert Gottfried interview so and so, and they're like, isn't his voice annoying? How do you listen to that? And I'm like, well, he's not yelling. He's interviewing somebody.
Have you guys heard the segment where Gilbert Gottfried reads a segment from 50 Shades of Grey in his
I was just about to bring that up.
Oh, no. That sounds hilarious.
It is.
It's like a Funny or Die video. It's pretty good. It's on YouTube.
If you want a piece of what Gilbert does best as a comedian, though, look no further than Gilbert Gottfried's roast of George Takei.
Oh, of George Takei. There was a joke in that I did not get until the second time. I don't even know if I should repeat it. Should I repeat it, Ken?
Probably not.
Yeah, let's not, because
okay, fine. But I will say
the thing about Gilbert jokes is they are often jokes that are incredibly offensive.
Let's end this review of Gilbert by talking about the Hugh Hefner roast. Because I actually went and watched the documentary The Aristocrats afterwards, after I was finished Gilbert, because I haven't seen that movie since high school. Does anybody know this story? Does anybody know what happened?
Like actual Aristocrat story?
No. Well, with Gilbert at the Hugh Hefner roast.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell the story, Bill.
Gilbert Gottfried was on the dais of the Hugh Hefner roast, and it was maybe a month after 9/11. It was very close to 9/11. And Gilbert did a 9/11 joke, which just dead air, no response from the audience. Someone yelled out too soon.
So that's why Gilbert got fired from the Affleck duck.
No.
No, that wasn't that.
Was that not it?
It was tsunami, right?
It was a similar thing. It was the earthquake in Japan.
Oh, okay.
In the footage of him at the roast, you can see him like physically frustrated and trying to think of like how to save this blunder that he just made, making this 9/11 joke. So he just tells the Aristocrats joke. And it worked. It went over like gangbusters.
Right, and because it's a complete subject change, while at the same time it managed to be just as offensive and just as screwed up as he was intending to go. Just a different method of approaching it. And Gilbert is a comedian who's known for making those transgressive jokes at times that are inappropriate, and it's funny because he, the whole idea of it is he's making light of it so that you can come to terms with how screwed up the situation really is.
I think that's how he differs from Andy Dick.
I totally lied. We need to go out talking about the fact that there's a fucking scene in this movie where he's at like some army convention and there's like dudes in Nazi uniforms walking around.
Oh yeah, not only that, Bill, but that takes place at Pheasant Run, which is literally about 45 minutes from... No, not even 40. Geez, closer to like 25 minutes from me.
I had to pause the movie. I had to pause the movie at that point because I was laughing so hard at... Like, there's this sort of weird thing where like Gilbert is making jokes about it, and the guy, he's like, I feel so bad that I'm dressed like this.
So let me explain this a little bit geographically. There in the film, there's this scene where Gilbert is performing at a comedy club in St. Charles, Illinois, which is a town very close to me. In fact, my brother and my sister-in-law live there. So anyway, Pheasant Run.
St. Charles Place.
Yeah, Pheasant Run is this resort there, and it has this whole convention center, and it's very common that you get a lot of like groups there. And in this case, he happens to be performing at the comedy club at Pheasant Run called Zanies while a war history convention is going on. And there are people from all walks of life at this convention center dressed in, like, some people are dressed in Nazi garb, some people are dressed in
what is going on in the background? I keep hearing screaming.
What?
Am I the only one hearing that?
No, I heard it too.
I heard it too. I don't know. Is there sound in?
Whose end is that coming from?
That doesn't matter. Go ahead, Ken.
All right, fine. We'll just have a fucking horror movie in the background.
Okay, so on that note, essentially what it was is this comedy club is literally in this resort, and so and they don't quite reference it in the film, but the fact is he couldn't get away from these conventioners. They literally, like, when these conventioners are done at their convention, the only thing for them to do, if they want to drink and party, is go to this comedy club. And so he's performing and doing his comedy in front of an entire group of people dressed in old military uniforms, and particularly Nazis. Gilbert, of course, is Jewish, and proudly Jewish. And so there are these wonderfully, hilariously awkward moments in the documentary where he's interacting with these people in Nazi uniforms who are just so embarrassed because they know that Gilbert's Jewish, and they're like, "Oh God, what am I doing?" You can see them re-examining their choices in life right in front of him.
He takes this wonderful group photo with them where he hiles in the picture.
Yeah. Well, because Gilbert clearly appreciates the absurdity of the situation, because he knows these people aren't actually Nazis. That
he jokes about anti-Semitism, all like the Paul Lynde stuff on the podcast. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well,
those fucking Jews.
Well, and Gilbert's favorite thing on the podcast is to point out anyone who is Jewish.
Yes,
or even partially such. But
Milton Berle had the largest penis, and he was Jewish. That's my best Gilbert impression.
Yeah, work on it a little bit. So anyway, we've covered Gilbert enough. It's time for us to move on, because we've been burying the lead here, really.
Yeah.
In fact, Will, I think if there's anyone who deserves to begin our discussion of Rhapsody Street Kids Believe in Santa,
he's pulling a best of the worst on you, Will.
Okay.
Please, Will, go. How the hell do you begin this?
Well, wait. First, what do you mean by pulling a best to worst exactly from Red Letter?
Like Mike will pick up the video and be like, "Jay."
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm a little fuzzy on the details as far as why this movie, or as we established, this TV show or TV special exists. But if you go on YouTube and you type in Rhapsody.
Not Bohemian Rhapsody. It's
like rap.
RAPSITTIE.
City or Rap City Street Kids : Believe in Santa. You'll find this atrocity.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's just,
indeed. That's what I'll say.
Colin Wolf.
Yeah, it's, to put it bluntly, it makes Food Fight look semi-competent, which is not something I ever expected to say in my whole life.
It makes Sir Billy / Guardian of the Highlands look competent.
Yeah, I never got to see that one, but I've heard it's pretty wild. Yeah, it's just I think it was made by Scientologists. Besides, it's produced by Nancy Cartwright. I know that much. And it features the voices of Mark Hamill and somebody else kind of prominent.
It's got a bunch of people. It's got Jodie
Ariel
Benson
from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, Jodie Benson, Paige O'Hara, the guy that played the original Black Ranger on the Power Rangers.
Right. Yeah.
I almost called him Orlando Jones, but that's not his name. Walter Jones.
Yeah, Walter Jones. Yeah, and just and also just. As we said, Nancy Cartwright's in it, and she's doing the voice of Ralph Wiggum in this bully kid, which is super surreal, just in general. But I mean, coming out of these anime characters, I mean, the way that their bodies move, I was trying to figure a way to describe it, and I don't know if I can really put words to justice as far as like their body movements. It's like this weird like contortion thing where like they don't move their shoulders, they just kind of like turn like mannequins to each other.
It's like placeholder animation that never got finished.
Yeah, and their faces are really stretched out. Like they remind me of if you guys ever played Mario Party 2.
Oh yeah, the game.
There's like a point where you like play like this game where you stretch like out like Luigi's face or whatever, and it looked like they like did that where like they grabbed like the chin and just went whoop, and like it just they just are physically like grotesque looking individuals just because like they just don't look human at all. They look like you said, like, these weird placeholder things that should have been like the very, very, very first like design, like when they're like figuring out the story or something.
Yeah,
like, this should not have been on broadcast television or wherever it was.
It's like storyboard shit.
Yeah, it's like I was like, no matter how bad like it would have looked in 2D, I'm sure like the worst version of this in 2D would look better than this version in 3D.
Yes,
animation. Wasn't this part of like a demo reel or a tech thing from the company that did it, and they were planning this as one of 2 different feature-length animated films. It was gonna air between November 25th and December 25th of 2002 when it came out, I think. And it's kind of like, if you read the description, Will, did you read the description of this that the company actually put out that made it?
No, like I said, I only saw the thing itself. I haven't even watched the Nostalgia Critic review yet.
You don't. I mean, watch that if you like his jokes, because all that is his jokes. He does not talk about the production of this thing. If you want to get into the production of this thing, the YouTuber Rebel Taxi uploaded this last year, which is where I had first heard about this.
Yeah.
And like the first half of his video is him making jokes about the special. The second half of his video is him actually getting into the nitty gritty of the production, which Hawk, I don't know if what you're saying was entirely accurate, because they were at the end of this, it says Rhapsody Kids will return in the bunny, which I assume
bunny.
Yeah, I would assume is an Easter special.
And I think it was like the person said that was like the one child character that was like seen in 2 scenes. I think that's who that was supposed to be centered on, because like it sounded like a very, very young kid, and that was the only like young kid in the film. Or
the company that made this, apparently the head of the company is a Scientologist.
Yeah, I do. Scientology factors somehow into this, I know.
That's without a doubt how Nancy Cartwright got involved. And my guess would be that she sweet talked these other voice actors into signing on for it.
Almost certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like it almost felt like a Ponzi scheme. Like they like
what people say about the room. What like the room is this money laundering thing. That's
no, I think the room was actually like just him being incompetent with how to make a film. I'm saying that like what people say about that.
Oh man, because this thing is so ugly. That TV show Reboot was out almost 10 years before this.
Right. Yeah, well, like Toy Story was out.
Toy Story is a feature film. It's not for television, but
yeah,
that's why I bring up Reboot though, is because that show doesn't look anywhere near this bad.
Right. I don't think I've seen animation this bad in my at least CG animation this bad in my whole life.
So bringing up Food Fight.
I just have to reference Bill Leon at one point in the mid 2000s or early 2000s was a member of a group of amateur animators who used this program called 3D
3D Movie Maker, which is a Microsoft program.
And
it's for children. It is not an actual tool for animating.
Right, but there were some people like your age who were at the time, teenagers and such who worked on it and did these amateur animations that in some cases are actually fairly complex. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly basic and stripped down. The animation quality is just about as good as this, I would say. The difference being...
No. 3D looks like crap, but it looks better than this. Even the default stuff in the program.
I mean, since you were in that, I'm not going to take that away from you. But
I am 100% confident in saying that you're objectively wrong.
Okay. I will say, I mean, I can't really gauge in that, but I'll say it. There's like no central gravity to how these characters move.
Because, or the objects, yeah. When
like objects will just start floating, people will like be moving at different speeds. Like one person's like walking on this level and like a different, like nothing, like you. The architecture of like this world does not make any sense. Like
when Nicole threw away Ricky's present and he's running and he's like, oh, he's going to run after her and tell her how he feels. Like, no, he's like keeps running past her and takes off, storming away down the street.
It props, me props to you, Hawk, for remembering anybody's name in this.
Yeah,
I had to Google it.
It reminded me of that one scene in The Amazing Bulk. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie.
I've seen I Hate Everything talk about it in Red Letter Media. I've never seen the movie.
Okay. There's like a scene where like the Amazing Bulk is just like running like past all these different like backgrounds and just like whatever they could find on the computer. It just like
oh yeah.
It's like basically that like the whole time. Just people are just running and like different backgrounds are coming up and you just can't make any heads or tails of this.
Hey, I just bought a stock clip art library. Let's make a Christmas special.
The sense I got is the guy who created this movie must have bounced a check to the animation department, and this was like what they said, you know what, we'll just give them what we've got, and then that's what they released.
When you hear the stories about the guy behind Wolf Tracer Studios, like there's there's a Wikipedia for Lost Media, and the guy that runs it hit up the guy that runs Wolf Tracer Studios and offered to pay him to get these special kind of tapes transferred to digital so he could like the copy that we all watched that wasn't available before 2015, and this guy the Wolf Tracer guy got it converted twice and charged him, and he paid $250. Okay. So when you hear, I'm saying when you hear stories like that, it's like, no, this guy sounds like a scam artist.
Right.
I don't know if the people, because there's also accounts of the company that did the animation was hired, and the people that were paying him, this isn't what they had in mind. They just, there was no supervision as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, I got the sense, like, as I was watching it, like, producers would come in, they're like, oh, this looks like kind of unfinished. They're like, oh, no, you know, animation takes a long time. This is just a very early draft. We'll get to it. And then they keep coming in. It's like, I don't know. It still looks pretty unfinished. Like, don't worry. It just takes a while. See, computer animation's a new process. We'll get to it. And then, like, it got to close to the date, and it's like, yeah, this is not getting any better. And they, like, looked at the deadlines. Like, we guys got to release whatever we got, because this is it.
That, or maybe they were contractually obligated to release it.
Right, that's what I mean. Like they couldn't just shelve it for some reason. Like something had to come out, and this is
because there's no way anyone in their right mind would show this if they didn't have absolutely no choice whatsoever.
Right, like when you're like in class and you're like behind on a test, and it's like you have 5 minutes, and you just keep filling in C. It just felt like that. The movie, just like there's like, well, just whatever, just get it finished, and then.
Yeah.
I would love to go back in time and like Charles Dickens style, be a ghost outside of a window of like children tuning into this on television.
What channel was it on?
WB affiliates.
Okay.
Yeah. Which could include is UPN or was UPN a WB affiliate?
I think so. Yeah. Like back in 2002, they probably would have been. So
yeah.
So it's entirely possible that this film at one point debuted with Michigan J. Frog doing the introduction.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a Rap City Street Kids Christmas. Welcome to the WB.
It sounded a lot like Patton Oswalt's like whackity smackity doo bit.
Whackity smackity doo.
But yeah, it boggles my mind why this exists.
Has anybody tried to explain what happens, like plot wise?
Yeah, no, someone I think it was Hawk that explained the plot.
He mentioned so there's a kid.
So Ricky, they're doing an exchange of gifts, and Ricky likes Nicole, the blonde girl who has an entire song about herself. And because he gives her this bear, and because this bear is not a gift from the mall, she throws it away.
But the bear was
and then
from his mom, who recently deceased, and that was like the last thing she gave to her son. So why he would give it away so haphazardly, who knows? But that's a plot.
He said it's a gift from the heart just because his mom's gift was from the heart, which is
right.
I mean, that's why, but it's not. It doesn't make it not.
Yeah, I get like, but yeah, it's very poorly explained. But yeah.
So then she has to like go find the bear, and then like I don't know what else happens. But
Nicole treats everyone like shit, and then it's not until she finds a letter that Ricky wrote, I think, to Santa.
In a very, very convoluted way. He wrote a letter to Santa, and I guess he had other letters because he went to go to the mailbox, but the letter to Santa flies out of his hand. It goes in the air, spins around, eventually lands in her house.
Yeah, I think it just flies out of his hand. I don't think he even falls or anything. It just.
Plus, I mean, like the world, like the geography and the gravity of the world doesn't make any sense. Like, there's another scene where like he's like thinking about what's her name?
Nicole,
and he's like, the bear's just like floating around, like for no reason.
Oh, that scene! What the fuck was that? It was like they both took acid.
So Nicole realizes what a piece of shit she's been, and she goes to find the bear. She gives the bear back, and she also apologizes to all her friends.
She gives the bear back.
Yeah. Oh God, dude.
but she still thinks she's like the best person in the world, so it's not like she really learned anything.
Well, she's supposed to have, but she didn't really.
Right.
I mean, her dad is this.
She's just the nicest person in the world now.
Like if you had a dad like that just stood around all day, like, don't I have the most wonderful wife and son? I mean, I would be fucked up. Yeah. If I grew up around that, I'd be like, what? That's weird. Does your dad act like that, Ricky?
I thought it was weird how like the dad is like, oh, you know, Christmas, whatever, something about Christmas, and I have the credit card bills to prove it. Right. Like, 2 minutes later, they're like, but Santa's real, and it's like, wait, the movie called Believe in Santa. The entire theme is negated by one line about how human beings purchase these with credit cards.
She also says Santa isn't real at one point, like very prominently to a character, and like she
talks about gifts from the mall, so she knows they're not made in the North Pole or anything.
And if you're looking for a good drinking game for this movie, anytime the mall is mentioned or referred to, just take a swig, because
it's referred to so generically. It's almost like it's almost as if, and I hesitate to say this, that the script was lazily written.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's like, that's a big. That's a.
It's so lazy. It's not even an unintentional critique of capitalism. It's just the mall just is this vague place outside of the world of this movie that's just it's there and it's supposed to bring happiness. We never see it, or whatever.
This movie is like a product of AI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like Twitter AI.
That Twitter AI that believes in Nazis or something.
It posted a picture of Hitler with the word swag at the bottom.
Yeah. It's like that. It's like you tell an AI to make a children's animated Christmas movie, and then that's all that you say.
To be fair, that was the Hitler thing was a learning AI, and the people who they turned it loose on was the internet, which is just full of racist assholes. So it learned.
Right. It learned awfully quickly, and they eventually
was trying to sex with people, I think, which I felt, if this movie Rhapsody Kids were to gain sentience, it would do the same thing. It would be tweeting pictures of Hitler with the word swag at the bottom.
Wow. Is there any reason why it's spelt the way it's spelt? Rhapsody.
I think they wanted it to be like city, like they're city kids. Right. But this looks like the suburbs. Yeah. This looks like the town of South Park. They not even the town of South Park. The town of South Park in the N64 PS1 video game where the fucking draw distance, like it looks like Silent Hill.
Do you guys remember
my theory behind it is much more like nefarious, in that I think that they chose to spell it that way so he could trademark the word Rhapsody.
I think it's like rap because Ricky raps a lot, and it's Rhapsody.
Yeah, we should mention that he raps a lot, but he doesn't really like rap. He just kind of like haphazardly rhymes. Like, it'd be like if I was just like every now and then, just in this podcast, be like, "Hey, my name is Will, and I like to spill." So like, and just like half rhymes that like
He rapped how a 40-year-old screenwriter wrote rap in the 1980s.
It's not even that.
It's like Go, and I'm here to say.
It's like the characters, the writers wanted to make a musical, like, oh, and this is the character that raps all the time, and they sat down to write it, and it's like, fuck, I don't know how to write this.
Well, like,
it's almost like they're in over their heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Rhymezone.com.
Because like when the movie starts, like there's like a song playing, and it's like at first you don't even recognize it's a song. It just sounds like light rhyming.
It's like the end of the Grinch.
And the lyrics to that song don't match the visuals.
Right.
Like, for example, Rick says the stores are all filled with people and the streets are filled with people or something. Yet he's walking down an empty block.
Right.
Yeah.
And the mouthing is so bad that for a second I didn't even realize that was like him supposed to be speaking. I just was like, oh, it's actually supposed to be him.
And speaking of weird, awkward mouth movements, what about
his grandma?
Grandma who has
God.
Grandma speaks in tongues or like Starvin' Marvin. Take your fucking pick.
What the fuck was the deal with that? It's one scene where she
and then
like,
no. There's two scenes. There's two scenes that she does it. We might have been laughing over one of them when we all watched it as a group. But at the end of the movie, the third scene she's in, she speaks completely fine. That never happened. She wasn't Starvin' Marvin.
Right. So maybe she was playing an Andy Kaufman-like prank on her grandkid. I don't know. But the movie ends on this cheery note where they believe in Santa. You know, Merry Christmas, everyone, and to all the good year. And then, out of nowhere, Mark Hamill says, "Shut that door!"
Is that Mark Hamill?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it is. My God, it's such a weird delivery. Shut that door.
And it's clearly recorded at a different time from the last line Hamill says, because he has a line of dialogue right before that, and the sound recording style is completely different. You can hear more of an echo.
Right. So you think like he was going to his car in the parking lot and they're like, hey, we want more lines. And like they grabbed his like car door and he was just like, shut that door. And then
how do we make this work?
He was like, yes, that's what we needed.
So we haven't even talked about my favorite scene, which is on the best musical number.
Yeah.
Where she's in a room and just
that was your favorite scene?
Well, favorite, like ironically, because I just found it so
it's very
like that was like a hilariously terrible scene that like it's not even like her singing, it's just the way she dances. Mm-hmm. And that scene is
the singer is Jodie Benson. It's the goddamn Little Mermaid singing the song.
Yeah, I mean, like the singing itself is good, but the song itself is terrible. Yeah,
no, why? How did this happen? How did this get made?
But yeah, like she like dances, like she like turns and like keeps doing like these weird kicking things.
Yeah, like Elaine from Seinfeld.
Right, yeah, it's like even like weirder than that. It's just I can't even properly describe it. You have to like watch it on YouTube just to see that dance scene, which I can't even make heads and tails of. It's just like so bizarre. But it's pretty much a perfect embodiment of this weird, bizarre special that got into existence somehow.
Right.
So we'll go ahead. We've run much later than we normally do on our show. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up.
Like a Christmas gift.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. That's.
Would you guys recommend people watch this like with friends drinking?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I think absolutely.
It's enthralling and fun at the same time.
And it's
only 42 minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be watching A Christmas Tree next.
Oh, I've never watched that whole thing. It is also on YouTube.
Good.
The Nostalgia Critic review of that had me in tears, especially the little girl who doesn't make any sense.
I made it through A Christmas Tree with Zach and I watched that on Christmas Day, and it was actually there was exactly 90 minutes left in Christmas. It was late at night, and we said, you know what, let's do this. We put it on, and it was transcendent. It was horrifying. It was despicable. And it was a thing of beauty, beauty from terror.
Sold to the man in the rabbit mask.
There you go.
So we'll go ahead and wrap things up on this episode. Next week we'll be returning to discuss Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And anyone here planning on seeing Ferdinand?
Oh, I saw
I
it.
actually
John Cena movie. Yeah.
Yes,
John Cena.
John Cena's Ferdinand. I will be reviewing that this weekend.
Okay. Well then, in that case, maybe I'll find time to see that too.
What is it with you? Every time there's a new Star Wars, you got to see some other garbage movie. You had to watch The Road Trip when Force Awakens came out.
Oh, Christ.
I'm pretty sure. No, the Road Trip. The Road Chip, right? With the
Yes.
I definitely threw myself on that sword for something else. Like later on.
Okay.
That was definitely a trade.
I threw myself on the chipwrecked sword. So
I will say this much about Road Chip. Between that and Force Awakens, only one of them has John Waters.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
What? John Waters is in The Road Chip?
Yeah, he is.
And it's a scene where like they're flying a plane for fuck knows what reason, and he's in Alvin's in first class because of course, and he gets in a conversation with John Waters. And at one point, he's just like, "I know your tricks. I've seen the Pink Flamingo."
Yes.
Hold on.
like,
What?
And like there's like this scene like
Chipmunks movie references Pink Flamingo.
right, like, and obviously like the airplane, like they crash everything or whatever, and it's like, hang on, stop this, like, stop doing that. Let's break this conversation down a bit, like.
They
So
crashed
Alvin has
the plane,
seen
killed
the
John
Pink
Waters.
Flamingo. Like,
How did Alvin see Pink Flamingos?
that's what I mean. Did he like watch that? Like,
Jason Lee let him loose on the Criterion Collection.
I guess, yeah, or something. Like, it's obviously that he's supposed to be like an animal, so I guess like he's like used to.
Hey,
seeing...
Alvin, you want to watch Sallow?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I'm sure they probably got it past the MPAA, because I'm sure the MPAA censors have no clue what Pink Flamingos is, just because they're just they're mostly like mothers of soccer moms and stuff. But can you imagine what any parent taking their kids to that film how they would react if they knew, if only they knew.
If only they cut in
honestly, those are the parents that would probably get a kick out of that joke. If only because they're in that theater starving for something.
Yeah, I remember when I saw it, I had to see it for like a review in theaters, and that was like the one moment of like surreal bliss I had just seeing that. And like I had seen John Waters like the evening before he came to town to do his thing, and he talked about that, so I knew he'd be in the movie. And that still didn't prepare me for just how bizarre that scene would be. It's just, if you can find that one clip on YouTube, just watch the John Waters scene. Just don't watch any of the other movie. Just that one clip is worth it.
That's wonderful advice to go out of this episode with. So first of all, I want to thank you, Will, for joining us today.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
You feel free to join us on any of these episodes.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any of them.
Any or all. It's all up to you.
Anytime you want to.
It's really just a scheduling thing more than anything else. But
Sure.
I'll keep you posted.
But and it's always Wednesday at 8:00 Central Time, so adjust accordingly. Okay. And I'll go ahead and close the book on this episode. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Bye, bud.
Shut that door.